Our play starts in 1973, when the real life people who lived it were there. All but one person you'll hear from tonight is an actual person from this story who had an impact on this fight. And in most cases, you'll hear their own words taken from their writings, speeches, and interviews. With that, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else in between, please set your microphones to mute, turn off your broadcasting cameras, and listen to 81 Words. Act 1, Scene 1, Spring, 1973. Lights up on Spiegel's dining room table. Spiegel, Hartman, and Friedman are sitting around the table in a corner of the stage. They're having an intense discussion with the others. There's a single light bearing down on the center of the table, and the rest of the stage is dark. The men have cocktail glasses that are half empty, and each one has a cigarette burning in an ashtray. As the men become more animated, we hear words and acronyms like APA and DSM and names like Socarides and Evelyn Hooker, until finally one of the voices rises above the din and the others get quiet.
Look, I'm telling you, the only way to make the kind of progress we're searching for is to start changing out the leadership of people like Perry Talkington as the head of the APA. Then one by one, we have to start replacing those anti-progress traditionalists in leadership so we can mold the American Psychiatric Association into the modern organization it needs to be.
Which won't be easy.
Easy. It'll be impossible, Larry. Those old boys are entrenched.
Which is precisely why we can't run headlong at them. We have to be strategic, surgical. Only with them out of power will we ever be able to even touch the gay issue.
John's right. Strategic and damn near covert. If anyone finds out what we're up to before we're ready.
Your careers would be over. I could be finished just by being associated with this. Great Scott, if anybody on the board of trustees even knew that I was here or what was being discussed.
Spiegel gets up and pulls a large book from his briefcase, which is resting next to his chair, and plops it on the table.
Exactly. All because of this, right here, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the Bible of our profession as psychiatrists. If it's a disease we can diagnose, it's listed here.
I know the section.
And just so you know, that section, those 81 little words, have been used to keep people like me out of psychiatry for decades. You can't very well treat a pathology if you have a pathology. So I have to be secret about who I am. I can't let anyone know I'm gay, because if I do, well, these days, you just have to hint that a person is gay, and they could be on the street tomorrow. Well, look what happened to poor John Fryer. Just a rumor, and he lost his fellowship.
Larry's right, Fred. And it's not just psychiatry. Gays can't be teachers or medical doctors or really hold down any kind of professional position if they live out and openly. And this diagnosis code is a big part of why. But if we take it out, suddenly homosexuality isn't a disease anymore, and those against progress lose their cudgel.
I know the impact that this section has, and I'm with you, gentlemen. No one believes the damage this has done more than I. I just don't see how you change it.
Fred, if you were to guess, what percentage of doctors in the APA right now in 1973 think of homosexuality as a mental illness and that we should keep it that way?
Right now?
Right now.
I'd say the majority, the vast majority.
Give me a number.
Offhand, I'd say probably 90%. No, make it 95%.
Right. And I'd wager that part of why they think that is because nobody has ever been allowed to present a thoughtful, reasoned counterpoint. The leadership would never let that happen because people like Irving Bieber and Charles Socarides would never let them.
Fred, that's why we have to replace the people in leadership with thoughtful, forward thinkers whom Bieber and Socarides can't intimidate.
Then we can get real change, Fred. Then we can get real progress made. For starters, the removal of Section 302.
Fred, I had dinner a few nights ago with a young man who told me this story. When he was first realizing they may not be like other boys his age, he went into a deep despair. His family was very religious, you see. They took him to see a psychiatrist in Philadelphia. And you know what was prescribed for him? Aversion therapy. They would give him electroshock until he vomited. Then they would show him pictures of naked men and shock him some more. We're in the dark ages, Fred. The dark ages.
You all know that I don't just subscribe to any of that. When someone comes to my office and they tell me that they're homosexual, I say, good for you, don't hurt anybody. Then I pat them on the back and send them a bill. I don't go for all that conversion nonsense. I just try to help them get to a place where they can feel good about themselves, which usually means processing some of the giant steaming pile of guilt.
But you're the exception, Fred.
We have to change this.
Look, I'm with you, gentlemen. I am. Larry, I don't know if you know this, but John and I have been friends since when?
About 30 years. We served together in the war, the Navy Medical Corps. Larry, Fred is Polly's godfather.
That's right. Larry, I was the first person who John told that he was a homosexual, even before he married Babette. I didn't try to convince him that he was wrong or to get him to go for treatment. I just told him that if he and his future wife were going to have any kind of future together, he had to tell her.
And I did. I told her that very night. 2 weeks later, we still got married and have had a wonderful marriage with 4 beautiful children. She allows my dalliances and never bats an eyelash.
How is she, by the way?
She's been sick for a few days now. Not sure what's wrong. I'm taking her to the doctor in the morning.
And what's his name? Andrew?
Oh, Andrew's out, I'm afraid. I've been entertaining a young man named Robert recently.
Ask him how old Bobby is.
Oh, shut up.
He's 23, Fred.
John.
I wonder what Freud would say about that.
Never mind Freud. What would Irving Bieber think?
Probably that John's father was too absent or distant, so John's subconscious is reconciling his fraternal abandonment issues by trying to be a father to many, many, many other young men.
I assure you, I do not concern myself with whatever ancient carvings Irving Bieber would use to diagnose me and my behavior. Freud, though, Freud would think Bobby was a babe.
Gentlemen, in all seriousness, you have to tread very carefully with this. You would be run out of the profession if this went wrong, John. And you, Larry, you too.
We know the risks, Fred.
I wonder if you do. When those gay activists somehow got in and started their uproar at the APA's convention in 1970, in, where was it? San Francisco. They didn't exactly make any friends, you know. Then when they did it again in Dallas and then again in New Orleans, the reaction was even worse. Remember what Leo Alexander said in the Washington Post about one of them?
Oh, yeah. That was Barbara Giddings. He called her
a paranoid bitch right there in the Washington Post.
I wonder if that was his official clinical diagnosis.
Now you want to what? Pick up where they left off?
No, not at all.
We want to build on their momentum.
Momentum? It's a parked car, Larry. There's no momentum.
Because the current leadership won't let there be.
So we replace the leadership and strike a bargain.
John, why would the APA leadership ever bargain?
Well, for starters, so that our convention in Honolulu this year won't be disrupted for the 4th year in a row.
Nothing us shrinks hate more than a disorderly kerfuffle.
If we can somehow broker a peace deal between the gay activists and the APA, and actually invite some of these activists to the table for a discussion, we think we might be able to move the needle.
You'd never get the organizing committee to agree to anything like that, to say nothing of Socarides and Bieber. Oh no, hellfire they'd rain down.
You're right. Not with the current leadership in place, but it has recently come to my attention that several key positions are up for election this time. For example, Dr. Talkington is stepping down because his term of president is up. And for personal and health reasons, the president of the reference committee will be stepping down too. This is the first time in history that 2 of the 3 most powerful positions in the APA are up for grabs. We could take over 2/3 of the organization in one fell swoop before anybody knew what we were up to. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Well, when you get your ass kicked like I have on my committee the last few years, you learn where the boots are.
It's still a very dangerous game that you're playing here.
But Fred, don't you think the success is worth it?
Fred, you know the old guard has to go. The damage they've done.
Damn it, gentlemen. Don't you think that I want that? Don't you think that I'm tired? Tired of sitting up here in the ivory tower while the world burns below us? Don't you think that I'm tired of the APA not having an opinion on the psychological damage that filled every bullet they shot at those kids at Kent State? Don't you think that I'm tired of the APA not weighing in on the long-term psychological conditions facing our boys in Vietnam, which we'll be dealing with for generations? Well, I am, damn it. I'm tired of us not having an opinion on the biggest social issues dividing our country today. I'm tired of having to look at my daughters and wonder why our organization doesn't feel it necessary to weigh in on the idea that a woman should have equal rights or even autonomy over her own body. Have you ever noticed how very few Black psychiatrists there are in the APA? Nor should there be, when we never stepped up as an organization to support Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act, even though we know damn well that restricting people's prospects leads to lifelong psychological distress. Larry, when you were able to get the leadership to create the Committee of Concerned Psychiatrists after Kent State, I really thought that things would change. For the first time in years, I was optimistic. But everything your committee has recommended, every statement proposal, every change has been stamped down by narrow-minded conservatives at the top. Gentlemen, the American Psychiatric Association can and should be one of the most authoritative voices on progressing the issues of the day, because these issues impact mental and emotional health. But instead, what do? What we do is worse than staying silent. We allow ourselves to be society's bulwark against progress. We're used as a tool, not to help society push forward, but to keep it in line. We follow guidelines, like those 81 words, to reinforce society's norms and keep everyone in their box. We use therapy sessions to slap people down when they struggle against what society thinks they should be. Gentlemen, I'm very tired of that. But as long as people like Socarides and Bieber and their ilk are pulling the strings, what other choice do we have?
For a moment, the group is quiet. After a while, Hartman and Spiegel look at each other, nod, and smile broadly.
Fred, you're quite right. Our committee has been stymied every time. We've been completely ineffective, and we're tired of that. Now we're fighting back.
Fighting back how?
Tonight, at this very moment, all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, members of my committee are sitting down in dining rooms just like this one, with a bunch of other liberal, open-minded psychiatrists, thought leaders they've recruited, as we all try to reckon with the damage our profession has wrought, which you so passionately described.
He's right. We've kind of called ourselves the Young Turks. We all support the installation of new leadership that won't be afraid to have exactly these discussions, that won't be afraid of the Biebers and Socarides of the world. They won't be afraid for the APA to have an opinion for once.
Wouldn't that be nice?
We agree. That's why right now they're waiting to start spreading the news about who our candidates are. The nomination for those seats, the APA president and the president of the reference committee, have to be submitted by tomorrow at noon. And we've deliberately waited until the last possible moment so news doesn't leak out before we're ready. Once the nominations are in, the Young Turks will very quietly begin the grassroots work of making sure our slate wins. Tonight's the night we begin to change the face of the APA, Fred.
Hartman and Spiegel once again pause and nod to each other.
Fred, Larry's committee thinks that I should be the candidate they put forward to run for president of the reference committee.
Really? I think that's a wonderful idea. There's not a better man for the job.
Right now, everything that comes out of our committee dies in the reference committee. They won't even take it up, much less approve it and pass it off to the president. But with John in charge of the committee,
I'll be in a position to change all that. Finally, the big changes we want to make will be given a platform and sent out to the president, who will then have to go on record as supporting or not supporting each and every one of them.
Well, John, Larry, I think that's marvelous. If you brought me here tonight to seek my endorsement, know that you have my full-throated support, truly.
Well, thank you, Fred. I knew I could count on you, but I'm sorry to say that's not quite all of it.
Oh?
Larry's committee has also identified a candidate who is well respected, has an impeccable body of work, and would be acceptable to the establishment currently in place, but is really much more liberal minded than they know, like a Trojan horse candidate, if you will. Larry's committee wants to put this person forward in the next round of elections to serve as the president of the APA, and we think the Young Turks can sway enough votes to get him installed.
I see. Well, then they would have my support too. You know, maybe this scheme of yours could work after all. Maybe not to remove Section 302, but for some of the other things that you want to do, that frankly we need to do. This Machiavellian style plan of yours just might work.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Well, tell me, who is this Trojan horse candidate that you have in mind for president? Do I know him?
that would be you, Fred.
I'm sorry.
Blackout. Act 1, Scene 2. Lights up on Lieutenant Elgin's office. There are two armchairs facing each other, and between them is a small circular table. In the center of the table is a vase with a sparse flower arrangement. Elgin, a young and new psychiatrist, is sitting in the chair stage right, writing on a notepad. The stage left chair is empty. We hear a knock.
Come in.
Elgin stands up a little nervously. Morrow enters, stops a few feet inside, stops and snaps to attention and salutes. Morrow is a handsome young black man wearing a Navy uniform. He is younger even than Elgin and clearly uncomfortable, visibly nervous, and trying very hard to hide it.
Seaman Morrow reporting for Lieutenant Elgin, sir.
At ease, Seaman. Inside these four walls, you can call me Doc or Dr. Elgin if you like. Whatever feels more comfortable for you. Also, we don't need to be so formal. This will only work if you speak to me freely. Comfortable. Come, sit.
Morrow walks to the chair and somewhat sheepishly sits.
Thank you, sir. I mean, doctor.
You're nervous, Morrow. Remind me your first name?
Thomas, sir. Tom to my friends.
Your name is Tom Morrow.
Yes, sir. My parents, they had a sense of humor.
I guess so. Tell me about him.
Not much to tell, really. My mom was a teacher. My father was a truck driver.
Have they passed on now?
Oh, no, sir. They retired. Now they mostly walk around the park by the house and about the hippies and their reefer. And if I'm being honest, sir, about Nixon.
Yeah, mine too. Your father, was he gone a lot?
Sir?
He was a truck driver. Would he be gone for days or weeks at a time? Then too tired when he got home, didn't have time to make for you?
Oh, no, sir. My old man drove a truck for the Teamsters in Chicago, local grocery stores mostly. He would go in early, but he would always come home by supper time. We'll always hang out at night, him, me, and my older brother.
I see. Your mother then? You said she was a teacher? She's a very strong-willed lady?
Yes, sir. She was a teacher at my primary school. She taught third grade.
Was she very strict?
I suppose so, but not as any more than any other moms in the neighborhood.
At the time, did it feel stifling, overbearing?
No, she was good. I never felt stifled that I can remember.
So, good family.
Yes, sir. I say very, sir.
Yes,
Sir?
Tom?
May I ask why the interest of my parents?
Well, usually it's It's just that usually, according to the literature, you understand, usually when someone is a homosexual, it's because there's some element at home that occurred during the more formative years, most likely from an absent father, overbearing mother, or some combination of the two.
Oh no, sir.
Doctor or doc, please, Tom, you can relax here. Just be yourself.
Sorry, Doc. No, there was nothing like that at home. I had a good family. Not too much of anything. One thing, I guess maybe just the right amount.
Well, Tom, I'm not sure that you're the best person to judge that, are you?
How do you mean?
Well, look at it this way. I'm sure your parents are great. I mean, you love them very much, yes?
Oh, yes, sir. Very much.
I'm sure you do. And when you love someone, we can overlook things about them. Things maybe aren't as perfect as they could be. See what I mean?
Well, I mean, I guess.
Now, understand. I'm not saying you shouldn't love your parents or that you should resent them in any way.
Wait, why should I resent my parents?
I'm certainly not saying that they were bad people, not in the least.
Bad people?
Oftentimes, the people who care about us, well, they love us so much that they can make mistakes or overthink what they should do. As a result, they give too much in one area and not enough in others. Sometimes, not always, it can cause things to kind of haywire. Do you understand, Tom?
No, sir. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure how it applies to me.
Well, it's like I said, Tom. People aren't just born homosexual. Something happens along the way that causes it. At some point in their normal development, usually in the early and most formative years, people sometimes get short-circuited by something and it throws them off kilter, out of whack. You see, it's rather like sailing. Have you ever gone sailing, Tom?
I haven't been assigned to a ship yet.
How about as a kid, like on a sailboat out in the open ocean?
Oh, yes, sir. We had a slip just a few feet from our mansion on the Gold.
You're being sarcastic.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Sir. We grew up on the south side. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich. We sure didn't have boat money.
Well, you can use your imagination. Let's say you're trying to sail from, say, Plymouth to Boston. If your navigation is off by just a couple degrees and you're coming out of Cape Cod Bay instead of docking in Castle Island, you could find yourself headed to Salem or even Gloucester. All it takes being off just a couple of degrees when you first start out.
Salem? Isn't that where they burned the witches?
Interesting that you should connect those two. But you get my point. If something happens, even the tiniest thing, when you're first starting out on this voyage called life and you get thrown off course, you wind up
in Salem.
Right. Exactly. And for you, Salem is your homosexuality.
Yeah. I was able to put that together, sir.
Yes?
Why do you say it like that? Homosexuality?
Am I? Well, I guess I'm just not used to it. To be truthful with you, you're my first homosexual patient.
Oh, I see.
So anyway, back to what I was saying. Because homosexuality doesn't just naturally occur somewhere, somehow you get thrown off course. Tom, my job is to help you understand that and to see if we can isolate when and what it might have been. My goal is to help you confront it head on, and over time, you can deal with it in a healthier way, one that lets you live life as a happy heterosexual, like a regular Rock Hudson, or even Shaft.
Are you for real right now? I'm just trying to understand. You think something happened to me when I was a kid that made me this way? And that maybe my mom or my dad had something to do with it? You think if you fix that, I could be normal?
Well, something like that. You'd be doing the work, though. I can't fix you. You have to fix yourself. And as for being normal, what's normal these days?
Would I be able to stay in the Navy if I'm not, a homosexual anymore?
Well, Tom, the Navy doesn't have homosexuals. I mean, it's the Navy. Occasionally, and it's rare, someone like you will come in and discover latent homosexual tendencies buried deep within their subconscious, which then manifests when they get around all those other men. But when that happens, they're usually identified and quickly separated from the Navy so they can get proper treatment. It's really the best thing. So you will be separated.
So whether I go through with these sessions or not, I'm gonna be discharged.
Not quite like that. Participating in these sessions will mean you're able to stay out of the brig until you're discharged, presuming, of course, you can resist those urges until then. So to be blunt, it's treatment until discharge or the brig until discharge.
Well, I guess that's it then.
Right then. So tell me about your brother. He was older, right?
Blackout. Act 1, Scene 3. Lights up on Barbara Giddings' dining room table. A single dining room table sits in the corner of the stage. A telephone is on the table, and Giddings is seated at the table looking at her watch. Her phone rings. She looks surprised and picks it up.
Barbara Giddings here. No, he hasn't come yet. I don't know. He was supposed to be here a half hour ago. Well, I don't know what's keeping him. Right now, I'm thinking he isn't coming. Well, I don't know what we'll do.
There's a knock on the door.
Someone's at my door. It might be him.
Giddings hangs up the phone and goes to her door. John Fryer enters. He's a stocky man, and his body and face shows us he's very anxious.
Hi, John. I'm so glad you came.
Not sure why I did. I can only stay a moment.
Well, you're here now. Come, sit. Give me your coat.
Fryer doesn't immediately move. Giddings has to coax him a little with a friendly smile and motions to the dining room table. Finally, Fryer relents, removes his coat, and hands it to her. She moves to the dining room table and sets his coat on the back of one of the chairs. She pulls a separate chair out for him, smiles broadly. Finally, John moves to the chair.
I almost didn't,
You almost didn't what?
come. I almost didn't come. I shouldn't even be here.
Oh, I see.
I mean it, Barbara. I turned my car around twice. That's why I'm late. I hate being late.
Well, you're here now. That's all that matters. Can I get you a drink?
Oh, I'd love a martini. I'm awfully edgy.
I have Schlitz.
Of course you do. Fine, yes.
I can put it in a martini glass if that would help. A Schlitz teeny.
Thank you.
I see. Okay, it's like that.
I'm very nervous.
I see that.
Barbara, I can't keep a job. Ever since I was let go by Penn, I haven't been able to get steady work. It's one rejection after another. They all say the same thing, I'm too qualified. But really, it's the rumors about me being gay. They're all swirling around me. I feel like...
What about the hospital job?
They let me go today.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry.
Everyone in our clandestine professional group agrees. If I do this, Barbara, what you're asking, I could forget about ever teaching again. I couldn't even practice. Barbara, I'd be finished. Do you understand? They take away my license for sure. I'd be persona non grata. What's more, everyone in the group thinks that if I come forward, it could even bring extra scrutiny on them.
But why would anyone in your group be worried? Aren't they all very secretive? Nobody knows it even exists except the people in it. I only know because you told me about it.
Well, that's very true, but it's not as simple as that, is it? If I come out and go public, then everyone I have ever associated with will be put under a microscope. Rumor and innuendo will follow anyone I've ever been seen talking to, having dinner with, even if they aren't homosexual. It won't matter if they're part of the gay PA or not.
The what?
Oh, it's what we call ourselves. It's kind of a joke. It's like the APA, only we're gay, so we're the gay PA.
That's a gas. How many people are in it?
About 60. But if you're thinking you want to ask another one of us, good luck finding them. And to be honest, none of them would do it either. It's career suicide, Barbara. Besides, none of them think it would work anyway. So it's a fool's errand.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean that everyone in the gay PA thinks that there's no way in God's green earth that the nomenclature committee would ever consider changing section 302 in the DSM. Nobody, not one of us thinks homosexuality will ever be delisted as a disease.
But doesn't your group have some power?
Not really. Some of us have positions of leadership within the organization, but we don't wield any organized power as a collective. We'd have to come out of the shadows for that, and that will never happen. We're a bunch of friends of Dorothy who all found each other by happenstance. So once a year at the APA convention, we find a gay bar in whatever city the convention's being held in, and we all secretly come together and to commiserate with each other. We're more support group than any kind of professional caucus. I'm sure that most of the people in the actual APA don't even realize that there is as many gay psychiatrists as there are. I'm sure they wouldn't believe who is. Some of them even shocked me. I had no idea. And I'm unusually good about finding others. It's like a radar I have.
I hear what you're saying, John. I do. But this plan could work. It really could.
I don't see how. Even if the Young Turks take over more committees, the DSM is never going to change.
The who now?
The Young Turks.
Well, who are they?
Well, like the gay PA, they're not an official part of the organization. They're a group of liberal psychiatrists pushing the organization to have a more public stance on social issues. We all call them the Young Turks because they're challenging the establishment. Mind you, they're having no luck. They started a few years ago, right after those kids at Kent State were killed by the National Guard. A couple of those doctors petitioned the leadership of the APA to create a committee, which they called the Committee of Concerned Psychiatrists. But everything the committee recommends gets knocked down.
But that's great. Do you think they'd take this on?
Oh, God, no. They're more concerned about trying to get the APA to issue a position supporting women's autonomy in that abortion case that the Supreme Court is about to hear, as if the APA could ever take a stand on that. They're even trying to get the APA to issue a statement of support for the ERA.
That would be amazing.
Well, it would, you're right. And the doctors who are leading the charge are well respected. They're liberal crusaders like John Spiegel and Larry Hartman. They're giants in the field, very well respected in progressive circles, but even they won't get anywhere because, well, while they're powerful, they aren't quite as powerful as the people in charge. So if they can't get the organization to issue a statement supporting something like the ERA, something everybody and their brother knows is going to pass, then what chance does the gay PA have radically changing the face of its psychiatric care of homosexuality?
Are you one of the Young Turks?
As far as I know, none of us in the gay PA are. None of them are gay, that's for sure. I don't socialize or communicate with them at all. We don't ever have any idea what they're up to until they publish a position paper. Again, we are deep, deep underground.
And you don't even want to try?
We're not activists, Barbara. We're psychiatrists.
So you just stand on the sidelines doing nothing?
We don't do nothing. We got your group press passes for the convention in San Francisco, didn't we? That got you in the door for your demonstration. The doctors made the national paper. You guys made the national papers with that stunt, didn't you? You even got called
a paranoid bitch. One of my proudest moments.
Right there in the Washington Post. In Dallas, we left the stage doors open so your group could storm the stage. That's not doing nothing.
John, I know you've helped when you could.
Okay, so then don't say we don't do anything. We don't sit on the sidelines, but we can't be up front and center. We just can't. We'd be ruined. I mean, just look at me. I could be the cautionary tale.
John, I know it's a big thing. I understand. But this time we have to do something more than just wave signs and take over a stage. We have to do something that's effective, something that would force them to listen. You know better than I do how damaging it is for our community that homosexuality is considered a disease. The longer it stays that way, the more lives will be ruined. The more lives will be lost.
Barbara, I want to. I do. But you have to understand, if our group was somehow able to set up a seminar, the kind you're asking for, if I stood on that stage in Hawaii and told everyone I am gay and then explained what it's like to be a gay psychiatrist, it would ruin my career. I could stand on that stage and explain how it feels to have to hide who I am from my colleagues and friends, to be constantly looking over my shoulder, to always be on guard for fear that the wrong move, the wrong gesture, glance, or even the slightest effeminate affect could ruin me. Look, I can stand on that stage and tell them that I've known I was gay since I was a child, that it's neither the result of nature nor environment. I could stand there and state the obvious. The only reason they found a causal link between homosexuality and mental illness is because of research leading to that conclusion was conducted exclusively on gay men who were actively in therapy. Did you know that? It's true. The entire body of research that concluded with homosexuality being labeled a disease was based entirely on people who already thought they were sick because they were gay. Instead of reasoning that for some people being gay causes them mental distress, so-called intellectual titans like Charles Socrates and Irving Bieber decided that being gay was itself the mental illness. I mean, it's crazy.
Is that true?
It is.
That I didn't know that.
As a psychiatrist, I'm supposed to tell my homosexual patients that there's something wrong with them, when I know damn well that's not true. But if I stand up in a meeting of the APA, say all of that, my career, hell, my life would be over. And all of it would have been for nothing, because it will never change.
John, I know it's a lot to ask. I understand that, I do. I really think it could have an impact. I think if one of those old stuffed shirts had a chance to listen to what you had to say, to know that one of their own was standing up for this and sharing their personal experience, John, I really think it could move the needle.
Oh, it'll move a needle, all right. It'll be a 7.0 on the Richter scale. Barbara, I can't. I just can't. I'm sorry.
Fryer takes one last swig of the beer bottle and stands up, grabs his coat from the back of the chair, heads straight for the door and exits. Giddings gets up and calls after him.
John! John!
Once Fryer is gone, Giddings heads back to her beer and dining room table, plops down and takes a very deep breath. She thinks for a moment, then a wry smile creeps across her face, and she picks up the phone and dials a number.
It's me. He just left. He'll do it. He doesn't know it yet, but he'll do it. Because if he really wasn't at least interested, he would have left sooner.
Blackout. Act 1, Scene 4. Lights up on the dining room table of Charles Socrates. He is sitting at the table reading the paper. The table's in a different corner of the stage with a single light illuminating the table from above. There is a half-filled glass of white wine on the table. He is shaking his head in disbelief. There's a knock on the door and he gets up to answer.
Yes, just a moment, please.
He answers the door. Irving Bieber hurriedly enters. He's holding a rolled up newspaper and is clearly angry.
Irving, what a wonderful surprise.
Have you seen this, Charles? This is beyond the pale.
Bieber walks to
Yes.
the dining room table and sits in a chair. Socarides follows behind him and sits.
Yes, I'm just reading it now.
I mean, the unmitigated gall of some people.
Bieber grabs the wine glass and finishes it in one gulp. He unrolls his paper and begins to quote from a specific section.
Here, look what they say here. Quote, with his research, Dr. Irving Bieber is one of the men responsible for the continued persecution of homosexuals by simultaneously labeling them as sick and unworthy of compassion or empathy.
Yeah, they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
I have never said homosexuals didn't deserve empathy.
Of course not.
My entire life's work has been about helping the homosexual.
I can't understand why the Post would ever print a letter like that.
I don't even know the man who signed this, Ronald Gold. Who on earth is Ronald Gold? What has he ever contributed? Who is he to cast aspersions on my credibility, my life's work? He's probably with those hooligans who keep protesting our conventions, the Gay Liberation Front. Well, Ronald Gold, whoever you are, you're not nearly as smart as you think you are.
Irving, I certainly understand your anger, and I'm not saying you're not justified, but we must remember these people are unwell, and they're clearly not getting treatment. We shouldn't expect them to act or think rationally.
I suppose you're right. I'm sorry to come barging in here like this. Where's Claire?
Well, she's out with the kids at the cinema. Can I get you a drink?
Socarides grabs the empty wine glass and gets up from the table and starts to exit.
Yes, sure. Whatever you have. Oh, not whatever it was I just drank. I didn't care for that.
Socarides shakes his head and exits.
You know, Charles, it really does wound me that these people perceive me this way, that they perceive us this way.
Socarides returns with two glasses, one red and one white. He places the red next to Irving.
My friend, we know very well that people who are going down a dangerous path of self-destruction will lash out at anyone whom they perceive as a threat, even when that person is offering the best help possible. Remember our late colleague Edmund Burglar wrote about homosexuals. He called them sick people requiring medical help. But he added that they were also an essentially disagreeable people.
Well then, he known this Ronald creature.
They laugh for a moment.
You want my advice, old friend?
You're going to give it to me even if I don't.
True, it's the cost of free wine.
I hope the advice is better.
Remember why you started in this work. Get regrounded in your purpose. Ignore the slings and arrows of those who would call into question that life's work or call you a bigot.
Thank you for that, Charles. You're right, of course.
Cheers, my friend.
Bieber raises his glass and they clink together.
You know, ever since these hoodlums caused all that commotion outside of that bar in Greenwich Village a few years ago, they seem to have emboldened themselves.
I've noticed that correlation too. There has definitely been an escalation since then. I don't mind telling you, I found that entire incident totally shocking. Just shocking. How on earth could you ever believe that rioting in the streets, burning police cars, breaking the windows of those poor little shops, and then looting? How could anyone ever come to the conclusion that that kind of lawlessness would elicit any kind of empathy? I mean, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
I couldn't agree more.
When I first started this work, I was in the Army. I couldn't believe the number of men the Army was simply discarding for what was, in my opinion, no good reason. And this was during the war. Some of the more predatory homosexuals needed to go, sure, but others I felt weren't so far gone that they couldn't be treated. My book in '62 was about righting that wrong. It was about trying to tell the homosexual he was loved, that he had a place in our society, that he was sick and his behavior was wrong, but that he just needed treatment. And in your book, right after mine, it was the same message. There is treatment. You don't have to live this way.
And then just like now, our colleagues agreed with us. Our books have informed how the APA has treated homosexuality for more than a decade.
Yeah, but now we get crucified for it. For 2 years, there was nary a peep of opposition. The entire psychiatric community universally agreed, but burn a few cars in the street, make a spectacle of yourself, and now you can convince people that we're the devil.
Now, it doesn't help when wingnut doctors like Evelyn Hooker will tell any reporter who asks that we're not really offering treatment as much as we're enforcing social norms. Oh, and as evidence, they use crackpot studies that they themselves conducted, or they quote Kinsey surveys. Don't get me started on Kinsey.
Good God. What did his survey show? Something like 35% of American men have had sexual contact with another man to the point of orgasm.
Yeah, actually, I think it was 37%.
My word. Where were the men he was surveying? Los Angeles?
They both chuckled.
You know, Irving, I think I might have the solution to all of this. Something that might shut up everyone about it once and for all.
Don't tell me your committee finished its work.
We have, I'm pleased to say.
Oh, Charles, congratulations. Why didn't you say that instead of letting me drone on? Tell me, man, what did it decide?
Well, I have it here. The Task Force on Homosexuality, appointed by the APA itself no less, has found that homosexuality is the product of a faulty family structure. Then it goes for a moment and ends with this. We have unanimously concluded that homosexuality is a disorder of sexual development and does not fall within the range of normal sexual behavior.
My word, Charles, that is quite a statement.
The next part may be controversial, but we feel strongly about it. Because it is a disease that must be treated, this task force recommends that all laws serving to persecute the homosexual be abolished immediately.
You're going that far? That's outstanding. I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. To a man, everyone on committee felt strongly that homosexuals should not be further tormented for something over which they have no control.
That's outstanding work, Charles. When will you be making that public?
We'll be presenting the findings at our upcoming convention in Hawaii. Then the official recommendation will be sent to the reference committee, and assuming it passes, on to the president. We hope to have it voted on by the end of the conference.
There, you see? That should put an end to these kinds of rants. Oh, Charles, that is good news. I should like to see any of the naysayers and radicals stand up against the unanimous opinion of an APA-appointed task force. It really should, frankly, shut them up.
We're hoping the announcement has exactly that effect, Irving. The goal is for this to be the definitive and final word on the matter.
Hey, speaking of, did you happen to see the APA ballot?
I did. I saw Alfred Freeman was running for president.
Good man, Fred. He'll be a good leader.
I agree. Not all at all excited about John Spiegel for reference committee, though. I'm surprised nobody else ran for it.
From what I understand, the vacancy came as a surprise. But I'm not worried. Assuming Friedman wins the presidency, be a good one to keep Spiegel in his place.
We certainly don't need radicals running this organization, that's for sure. Inmates running the asylum, eh, Irving?
They both chuckled.
Charles, I've taken up and I should get going. Charles, once again, you've brightened my outlook. Thank you.
Beaver starts towards the exit. Socarides gets up and follows him.
You're a good man, Irving. I am too. We're not the monsters these radicals paint us to be. They're sick, that's all. We're trying to help them. It's as simple as that. The work we do is good. It has value. The world sees that.
Well, hopefully more value than your wine. Really, Charles, if the bottle is so low on the grocer's shelf that you have to bend down to pick it up, just leave it there. Pick the stuff in the middle. It's easier on your back.
Socarides motions for Beaver to leave.
Goodbye, Irving.
Goodbye, Charles. See you in the funny papers.
Beaver exits. Socarides heads back to the table and holds up the glass of red wine. He swirls it around and studies it for a moment, then shrugs his shoulders. Blackout. Act 1, Scene 5. Lights up on Elgin's office. Elgin and Morrow are still in their session. Morrow is decidedly more at ease now, realizing his fate is sealed. Elgin slowly begins to appear more nervous as his questions lead nowhere.
Roman, we lost CJ for a second. Here he is.
CJ, you're up. Morrow, Act 1, Scene 5, page 29.
Oh,
You're on mute, CJ.
He's on mute.
And
What do you mean abused?
there we go.
I mean, my parents tanned my hide a few times, but that was unusually because I was being a little shit, a pain.
No, I'm sorry. I mean sexually. Did anyone ever take advantage of you sexually? An older cousin, perhaps, or maybe an uncle, family friend?
I wish.
Pardon?
No, sir, nothing like that ever happened. Why? Is that one of the things that triggers this?
It can be. It's not the only thing. You see, Tom, it's different for every person. We are all affected by things differently. For one person, driving a car can be an anxiety-ridden experience. For someone else, it's no big deal. The literature says that some homosexual men in their formative years experience some kind of physical violation. In a situation like that, our mind can play tricks on us. Eventually, we'll come to view the sexual part as perfectly normal. It's our mind's way of coping. Do you follow me, Tom?
Yeah, I follow you, but nobody raped me as a kid or as an adult.
Are you sure? Our minds can bury that kind of trauma pretty deeply.
I'm pretty sure. There wasn't anything like that in my family. My brother and I, we were taken care of. My parents are good people. Our family is good people.
I'm told that there are some men who drive truckers who will occasionally find some sexual relief with other men. Perhaps one of your dad's friends from work?
Wait, hold on.
Yes, Tom?
If I was raped, would that help me stay in the Navy?
Oh, no, Tom. But it would give us something to document in your record as a reason for your homosexuality. And then we could probably get your treatment in the private sector.
Oh, well, then never mind then. I was going to lie and say I was. No, I was never raped by my dad's coworkers or my mom's coworkers or by our neighbors. I did have a crush on my super son, but nothing ever happened.
A crush?
Yeah, our building superintendent was a guy named Alfredo, and his son was Antonio. Tony. He was in my brother's year in school. He liked girls, though, a little too much.
What do you mean?
There was a girl at school, Moretta Tompkins. She liked Tony, too, and had the right equipment, apparently. They started dating, and before long, Moretta had to go to a girls' school, and Tony dropped out to get a job, if you know what I mean.
How did that make you feel?
Sad for him. If he had liked me back, he wouldn't have had to drop out of school. I'm no biology expert, but I'm pretty sure you can't get pregnant that way.
Whatever happened to him?
Last I heard, Tony got a job in Detroit as a car plant, so Moretta moved up there and they had another kid together. Hey, that's a question, Doc.
What's that?
Tony never had a mother. I mean, she died while he was being born. Alfredo raised him up all by himself, but really Tony raised himself because his dad never did a bottle he couldn't finish. Tony was kind of stuck fending for himself a lot of times. So how come he's a regular Don Juan with the ladies and me, I like guys? All these questions you asked me about my parents, I mean, it applies to Tony, but he still turned out straight as an arrow.
Well, Tom, it doesn't work that way. Not every kid with a dysfunctional childhood is homosexual, but every homosexual is the product of a dysfunctional childhood.
How does that work?
It's like I said before, different things affect different people in different ways.
So, am I broken?
Elgin takes a moment to find the right words.
Broken? No, Tom, I wouldn't say you're broken. You have a disease, and that disease makes you think that what you're doing is okay. I think somewhere deep inside you, there's a big part of you that knows what's right. The part of you right now is fighting with the part of you that's holding on to this identity of yours that thinks it's natural and normal, but that's really the result of something that happened to you as a child. That part of you is trying to protect itself. It's like there is a tug of war between these two sides of yourself going on right now. But the good side, the real natural side, is losing. Tom, if you don't treat this disease, it's only going to make life harder from here. Look what it's already cost you. But losing your Navy career is just the first step. Later on, you could easily find yourself involved in even worse situations, ones that might cause you to rationalize other bad decisions, just like you're subconsciously rationalizing your homosexuality now. Not to mention, you'll be unmarried, alone, and unloved.
Doc, I hear what you're saying, but something in my gut says that's just not true.
That's your subconscious holding on to your trauma, not wanting to let it go.
But Doc, it doesn't feel that. It doesn't feel like that. I don't feel like there's some kind of tug of war going inside of me, like there's two different versions of me in here fighting it out. There's just one version of me. There's just one. And the only thing that I'm fighting is against the idea that I'm damaged. For me, it doesn't feel like that. And besides, Doc, I really do have good parents. I have good friends. I am loved. I am cared for. Still to this day, my folks and my brother know that that know what I am, and they still love me. Doc, I mean, I never even looked at a girl the way the other boys do. In my whole life, Doc, it never happened, not once. I know what the world thinks about people like me. I guess I know what the Navy thinks about me. I know I have to be careful. I know I have to watch myself. I know the wrong move down the wrong alley, and it can all be over. Shoot. I know all that. I know it won't be easy. It's going to be hard. And the color of my skin don't make it any easier. Doc, I'm not naive. If I'm honest, I don't know. I don't have it all figured out yet. I don't know what my life is going to look like when I'm old. Will I be single or will I have someone in my life? I don't know any of that. I'm 20 years old, Doc. I always figured I have some time to sort it all out. But I know I won't be alone. I have my family behind me. I have good friends who know all about me. Doc, I understand what you're saying, the literature says about people like me. I understand that there's this blueprint or map you're trying to peg me on, but that's what your teaching tells you that you're supposed to do. That's what the books all say. But the books don't define who I am. Those books do not know me. The person you're describing so far, the person the literature says that I am, that's not me, Doc. Not only that, I don't even know that person. I never met that person in my whole life.
Elgin takes a moment and lets Morrow calm down a little. Elgin, you're muted. Blaine, you're muted.
I understand how you feel. I want to help you, Tom. I do. I like you. So we'll keep probing until we find someone you do recognize. We'll figure out how this happened to you so we can fix it.
Blackout. Act 1, Scene 6. Lights up on Spiegel's dining room table. Spiegel is sitting at the table and Hartman is standing nearby holding a rotary telephone in one hand and the receiver up to his ear with the other. He is waiting. Spiegel is watching intently. And then finally,
hello? Is this Ronald Gold?
Across the stage, Ronald Gold is suddenly visible with a single spotlight. He is holding a telephone as well.
This is, yes. Who's speaking, please?
Are you the same Ronald Gold who penned a letter to the editor that appeared in today's Post?
Yes, and if you're another religious zealot, you should know I've...
Oh no, Mr. Gold, not at all. My name is...
Spiegel frantically waves at him, shaking his head, no!
Well, look, I'm not going to tell you my real name, and I'm not going to use some ridiculous pseudonym either. Let's just say my friends and I read your letter, and we agree with what you're saying.
Okay, well, thanks. Is that all?
Not quite, no. My friends and I think we might be in a position to help.
Oh?
Very quietly, you understand.
Are you with the APA? Because if you're not, I'm not sure how you would be able to help.
Based on that criteria, then I can tell you we are in a position to help you.
Oh, No kidding?
No kidding.
Tell him about the plan.
Well, son of a bitch.
Pardon?
It's just, well, what can you do?
Mr. Gold, do you know what the APA's Committee on Nomenclature is? What they do?
Huh? No, I've never heard of that.
It's the committee that more or less decides what's in the APA's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The DSM, as we call it, is really very important for psychiatrists. It lists every one of the verified mental health disorders that doctors can diagnose. Do you understand?
That's the book that lists homosexuality as an illness.
Correct.
So that committee you're talking about, they decide what goes in that book?
That's right. And they are the only ones who can take something out of the DSM. Do you follow me now? You understand if something isn't in the DSM, then it's not a disease.
I do, yeah. Okay. So I need to write another letter about the committee. What's it called again?
It's called the Committee on Nomenclature and Statistics, but simply naming them in editorials won't help. They're scientists. They're very deliberate. They won't be swayed by a few words in the paper.
The plan. Tell him about the plan.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe you're calling me with an idea?
You're very perceptive, Mr. Gold.
So let's hear it.
There's a young psychiatrist. His name is Robert Spitzer. He's ambitious, fiercely intelligent, and he's an important voice on that committee. Our group has spent some time analyzing all the committee members, and we feel that he would be the most approachable.
Is he like you guys? Does he think it's wrong too?
No. As far as we know, he subscribes to the same general theory as nearly all of the APA does, that homosexuality is rightly characterized as a disease, but we feel he's the one most likely to be swayed, but only if he hears a compelling argument.
Then what about him makes him swayable?
He's one of the few people in our field who is so genuinely intelligent. He doesn't feel he has to prove it all the time by being right. He's open to debate and discussion and to being wrong.
Tell him about the debate.
Okay, so what do you suggest? I'm not one for crowds or leading any kind of big demonstrations. I am not like that.
Well, that's fine. I wouldn't suggest that anyway. Instead, I would recommend a personal interaction. Polite, considerate, but direct.
What do you have in mind?
Mr. Gold, tomorrow evening, Dr. Spitzer will be participating in a symposium in Brooklyn. The event starts at 8 p.m. The symposium itself has nothing to do with homosexuality or the DSM. But were you to approach him in a friendly manner afterward and ask him very politely for a few minutes of his time, you might get it.
Tell him about the debate.
Hartman waves his hand at Spiegel as a kind of, I got this, be quiet.
Oh, okay. Then I demand he make the committee change the book?
May I suggest a different approach?
Okay.
Ask for a step in the process. Don't ask for the whole thing, just ask for a step.
I don't follow.
In order for the committee to even entertain something like this, it requires a very specific process. First, there would have to be a hearing. So ask for that hearing in the form of a debate.
Spiegel throws up his hands as if to say, finally.
A debate?
Yes. Tell him you want a debate about what's called Section 302. That's the part of the DSM that lists homosexuality as a disease. Tell him that in this debate, you would argue in favor of its removal, and he, Dr. Spitzer, should moderate the discussion. Tell him he could even choose those who would best argue in favor of keeping the section intact.
You know, I don't hate that, but it shouldn't be me. It really should be this other guy, Hans Hartfeld.
Oh no, Mr. Gold, it has to be you. You wrote that letter.
Well, that's just the thing. A group of us work on those letters until we have a version we like the best. Then I sign them. Hans is much better speaking in public. I'm really not the one to be in front of a crowd. That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work at all.
I see.
What? What do you see?
He says he didn't write the letter the group.
Who cares? He can argue for his cause, can't he?
Mr. Gold, I think because your name is on it now, you'll have to be the one to argue it. My guess is Dr. Spitzer would insist on it.
I'm not very good at public speaking, mister. I get tense and my brain, it seizes up. My whole body starts to shake. Hey, what's that about? You're a psychiatrist. What's wrong with me?
We don't have that kind of time.
See, I usually just go to protests to add to the numbers. I wave my sign and stand in the back and yell stuff. I don't know about speaking. Where would the debate take place?
Let that be his choice. But I suggest that perhaps the most ideal location would be at the upcoming APA convention this May in Honolulu.
How many people go to that?
About 8,000 or so, give or take.
Oh, that's a lot of people, mister. Whoa, that's a lot of people. I don't think, no.
Gold hangs up the phone and almost faints as the light shining on him goes out. Hartman pauses for a moment, looks at the phone, and then sighs. He quickly dials the number and waits a moment.
Wait, what happened?
He hung up. I think he fainted.
He what?
The lights come back up on Gold.
Hello?
Mr. Gold, you really have nothing to worry about.
Look, mister, 8,000 is, whoa. Well, it's about 7,999 more people than I've ever spoken in front of in my whole life.
I have the utmost confidence in you, Mr. Gold. I can't give away too much because I have to keep my identity a secret, you see. But I'm one of a handful of experts within the profession who specializes in a very particular kind of psychoanalysis called loquitur. Have you ever heard of it?
That's just Latin for talk therapy. We all do that.
Hartman waves at Spiegel to shut up.
Locu, what?
Loquitur. Oh yes, it's a very new field. It means that I can tell precisely about certain abilities you have strictly through speaking to you on the telephone.
Spiegel throws his arms in disgust and Hartman throws a dagger-like look at him.
Really? You don't say?
Oh yes. It came in very handy during Korea.
Here we go.
When we couldn't be close to the men, their generals would, well, they would call us on the phone, you see, so we could talk to the men and get a sense of whether they had it in them to complete the mission. Oh my, I shouldn't have told you that. It's very top secret.
Oh yes, very.
Really?
Quite. But I suppose now that you know, just from our phone call, I can tell that you can definitely do this, Mr. Gold. You can most definitely do this.
Oh, well, in that case, wait, how am I supposed to afford a trip to Hawaii?
I'm sure you're a very resourceful man, Mr. Gold. We have faith in you.
Well, how nice of you.
But we're putting the proverbial cart before the horse, aren't we? First, you have to convince Dr. Spitzer to agree to even have the debate in the first place.
Well, how would I do that?
By striking a deal.
A deal?
Yes. Let me explain.
Blackout. Act 1, Scene 7. Lights up on Giddings' dining room table. Giddings is shaking a cocktail mixer. On the table is a bottle of beer, and in front of an empty chair is an empty martini glass with 3 olives speared on a toothpick. There's a knock on the door.
Come in, John.
Fryer enters, still nervous, and only comes in a few feet.
Hi, Barbara. Why am I here again?
Come, sit. I made a martini for you.
Fryer looks surprised as Giddings empties the mixer's contents into the martini glass. She sets the mixer on the table. Fryer takes off his coat and hangs it on the back of one of the chairs and sits down.
I thought you only drank beer.
I do. I made the special just for you.
Oh, that's very good, very dry.
I'm glad you like it. I felt bad after our last talk. This time I want to start on the right foot.
I see. Wanting to make another run at me, eh? I figures. At least you have the right incentive.
Well, not really that. I understand your position. What we're asking is too much. But I had an idea, and I wanted to see if you thought it might pass muster with any of your colleagues.
Well, I don't know. Like I say, the gay PA is as underground as it gets.
I understand that. Here, have some more. It's all for you.
You know, I don't mind if I do. This is really good. So what's your idea?
Do you think that if we could find someone willing to stand up at the APA conference this year and talk about their experience as a gay psychiatrist, that your colleagues would somehow even get that on the conference agenda?
Barb, you're not going to find a psychiatrist to speak.
Let's just say that I could. Would your group make that meeting happen at the convention?
I don't know. It would be tough, but it's possible. We would need confirmation you have a real person, though. Once the agenda goes out with the topic listed, it really starts a ruckus.
Do you think people, I mean, the doctors at the convention would attend that kind of presentation?
Fryer stops to drink. He stops to think.
That's the rub. I don't think so. They might not go out of principle. I think in their mind, they couldn't be bothered to listen to someone who they think is sick, tell them why he's not. They would probably dismiss it as classic denial.
Well, what if nobody knew who the person was?
What do you mean?
Well, I was thinking, since anonymity is so important to you and to the rest of your colleagues, and for good reason, what if nobody knew it was you or whoever?
What are you going to do? Turn the lights off in the place?
Of course not. I mean, what if we came up with a disguise that was so convincing that nobody knew it was you? You or whoever would put on a disguise so good no one would ever know the true identity of the doctor. We could check into the hotel for you, even use a nom de guerre like Dr. Anonymous or something.
What in the world?
Hear me out. Don't you think that if that kind of thing was on the agenda, everyone would expect that it would be someone who needed to stay anonymous? If you think about it, someone being disguised and hiding their true identity would be the only possible way that kind of meeting could happen. Being anonymous would be the expectation, wouldn't it?
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, I suppose.
So if that would be what the doctors expected, all we'd need is a really good disguise. And in our group, I checked around, and I'm sure this won't surprise you, but we have some theater people who can do wonders with hair and makeup. You'd never even recognize yourself or you know, whoever did it.
Barbara, I don't know.
All I'm asking is for you to think about it and to see if your group could even get something like that on the agenda.
Fryer pauses for a moment. He eats one of the olives from the drink and looks at Giddings, almost studying her.
I will think about it. But right now, I think I should get out of here.
Fryer gets up and grabs his coat. While heading for the exit, Giddings gets up and walks with him.
Thank you, John. Truly.
I said I'd think about it.
I know, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for the drink. It really was very good.
You're more than welcome.
Fryer exit. Once he's gone, Giddings heaves a sigh of relief, goes back to the table, picks up the mixer, and notices there's still some left. She takes a swig out of it, and then crinkles her face.
Ugh, how do people drink those?
She grabs her beer and quickly takes a swig. Blackout. Act 1, Scene 8. Lights up come on a street corner at night. A very nervous Ronald Gold is pacing back and forth underneath a street lamp, practicing what he's going to say when the time is right. After a moment, Robert Spitzer enters from across the stage. Gathering his nerves, Gold approaches him.
Good evening, Dr. Spitzer.
Good evening.
Spitzer continues past without a second thought.
Dr. Spitzer, I was in the conference just now and heard you speak.
Oh, very good. Glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, I didn't understand any of it, but that wasn't what I wanted to talk to you about. If you could, just for a moment, Doctor.
Yes?
Oh, thank you.
Please, I'm very anxious to get home. It's quite a trip yet. I don't live in Brooklyn.
Hey, who does? Anyway, my name is Ronald Gold, and I wanted to come see you tonight because I was...
Ronald Gold. Have we met before? Your name, it's familiar to me, but I'm not placing it. I'm terribly sorry. Are we colleagues?
Oh, goodness, no.
I see. I'm certain I've seen that name before. Were you, I'm sorry to ask this, were you one of my patients at Bellevue?
What? No. I mean, some of my friends have suggested I should pay a visit, if you know what I mean.
I see. Well, nice to meet you then.
Dr. Spitzer, you're on the nomenclature thing, and I want you to change the DMS section 320.
Spitzer stops and pauses for a moment. He considers what he's just heard and decides to turn around and listen for just a bit longer.
I believe you mean the Committee on Nomenclature and Statistics, and it's the DSM. And unless I missed my guess, you meant section 302. Is that right?
Sure, if you say so. The part about homosexuality.
Ah, yes. Gold! You wrote that rather petulant letters in the Post, don't you? That's where I know the name.
Oh, well, yeah, that's me. And that's what I wanted to...
You came to some pretty outlandish conclusions, Mr. Gold. And you sullied the names of some of the most well-respected practitioners in our field. Men who literally wrote the book on homosexuality.
You mean there's a manual?
Well, I don't know exactly what you expected to accomplish by that or by stopping me here in the street, but I don't mind telling you that letters like that are incredibly rude and disrespectful and do nothing to advance your cause, nothing at all.
Dr. Spitzer, with all due respect, my people are being killed. I don't know a polite way to stop it.
Well, histrionics won't help you either, sir.
Dr. Spitzer, you're dismissing what happens to a person like me when you call us sick, especially when you say that we can get better if we just try hard enough. Every single gay person I know didn't want to be gay when we were first figuring things out, every single one. So when you're called sick, and we don't want to be, we try to get better. We try so hard, but it doesn't work. Not really. And not all of us can come back from that. I'm not exaggerating when I say that calling us sick can be the first step of a death sentence played out in slow motion. Doctor, I came here tonight because I wanted to make a very specific request as respectfully as I know how.
Spitzer considers what he's heard, and after a moment.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, sir, I wanted to ask if your committee would consider hosting a discussion or a debate between my side of the argument and people from your side who disagree with us.
Tell me, Mr. Gold, why would we want to elevate your discussion to that level? Why would we give you that kind of platform?
Well, sir, I think you might agree. We already have a platform. Every time we send in a letter to the papers, they publish it. But I think you'd agree that approach isn't getting us anywhere. So instead of talking at each other, maybe we could learn something if we talk to each other. And if we could come to an agreement on having that kind of discussion, then it would no longer make sense to continue talking at you in the papers or interrupting your conferences anymore.
Careful, Mr. Gold. You're inching dangerously close to an ultimatum, and you're in no...
Not my intention at all, Doctor. More of an armistice while peace talks get underway.
Spitzer is caught off guard, pauses, and chuckles.
You know, that's very good. That's well played, Mr. Gold. Maybe if you had shown this kind of subtlety in your letters, we could have had a better beginning to this conversation.
Well, we are all in a constant state of growth, are we not?
Touche, Mr. Gold. Well stated. So a debate, huh?
Yes, sir.
And ceasefire? I could see where having a conversation between two passionate sides might yield some information that neither side has yet considered. It could be illuminating for all of us. And you would, of course, argue for your side, yes?
Yes.
Gold pauses for a moment, clearly uncomfortable, and then finally shrugs his shoulders.
Yes.
And you're in the kind of position of power within your group to be able to stop the harassment?
You don't know anything about gay activists, do you? If you put 3 of us in a room to change a light bulb, we'll argue for 2 hours about the best way to do it. Then 2 will get so pissed off, they'll quit and start their own group. The Committee for Concerned Light Bulbs, leaving the one guy to change it the way he wanted to in the first place.
Sounds like gay activists and psychiatrists have that in common.
But one way or another, we can get the word out to cool it.
Fine. Now, I don't know the location you had in mind, but I think the best place for this kind of debate would be at the next APA convention, which will be held in Honolulu in May.
I was afraid of, yes, that would be perfect.
Excellent. Do you have a card?
Spitzer reaches into his pocket and pulls out a card case and opens it up, plucks a card from it and offers it to Gold. Gold takes it and puts it in one pocket while reaching into another to pull out a crumpled up card of his own.
Yes, here.
I will make some calls. This isn't a promise, but I will make some calls. I suppose I'll have to start with Dr. Talkington.
Dr. who?
Oh, Dr. Perry Talkington. He's the current president of the APA. His term will be up in May, but he'll still have final approval over the convention's agenda.
Oh, I see.
I'll talk to him and get back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Spitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. If we can get this done, I'm sure you'll be a passionate advocate for your side.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Indeed. And let's hope there aren't any light bulbs that need changing between now and then.
Yeah, in either of our houses.
Indeed. Good night.
Spitzer continues walking off stage while Gold smiles broadly and rushes off the opposite direction. Blackout. Act 1, Scene 9. Light comes up on 3 dining room tables arranged on the stage. One is stage right, one is center, and the third is stage left. The stage right table is the same as in Spiegel's dining room. Seated there are Spiegel and Hartman. The center table is from Giddings' dining room, where she sits alone. The stage left table is from Socarides' dining room, and he is seated alone. One light comes up on the stage right table with Spiegel. We hear a knock.
Come in. Fred, what a pleasant surprise. Or should I call you Mr. President-elect?
Spiegel and Hartman take turns shaking Friedman's hands.
Congratulations, Fred. Step 1.
Thank you. I bring interesting news. As the president-elect of the APA, I got a call earlier today from the outgoing president, Dr. Talkington, saying that he would like to very slowly begin stepping back from his responsibilities.
Well, what does that look like?
Rather than have to read the mountain of abstracts that will soon start landing on his desk, he's decided to grant me full autonomy of this year's convention agenda.
Wait, what?
I will be approving the agenda at this year's APA convention in Honolulu.
Hartman and Spiegel look at each other with shocked expressions.
You're kidding.
Are you serious?
This is incredible news.
Well, it was a bit of a surprise to me, but why is it incredible?
Spiegel gives Hartman a knowing glance.
Well, we have embarked on what is most likely a fool's errand, but its odds of success just increased, however marginally.
What did you do?
Well, see, Fred, it's like this.
We kind of coordinated a meeting between an activist and Robert Spitzer.
Spitzer from the nomenclature committee?
Right.
Whatever for?
Well, Larry had the idea that if...
Oh, sure. Blame it on me. Well, see, the thing is, we did a little profiling and determined that Spitzer would be the one most likely to be persuaded to initiate a debate.
A debate? Between who And about what?
Between some of the more conservative psychiatrists who would argue in favor of keeping Section 302 and the gay activists who write those letters all the time and have infiltrated the convention the last 2 years.
How did you coordinate that?
That's not important. What is important is that the activists said the conversation went surprisingly well.
Really?
And while it's really unlikely, it's still possible that Spitzer might get his committee to ask, well, you know, to add a debate on the removal of homosexuality from the DSM to the agenda.
Oh my God. So let me get this straight. You're trying to surreptitiously instigate the nomenclature committee to set up a debate between some of the finest minds in the APA and a gay activist?
Correct.
And do you think that your activist is capable of providing the highest form of the argument? I mean, think about what you're doing here, about what this person would be going up against. The doctors who'd argued in favor of Section 302, whoever they would be, would have all defended one thesis or another at some point at the finest educational institutions in the world, and would have won the arguments. They will have years of psychiatric practice under their belts and read or written every book on the subject. And their audience won't be a group of populists. It will be people just like them. John, Larry, if for some reason your activist isn't up to the task, if he gets flummoxed or allows himself to devolve into shouting, well, then you've lost. This whole thing will be lost and will push back this cause for a generation, if not further.
Well,
Of course. We have thoroughly vetted this activist who would be speaking. He's highly educated and very capable of defending his position with grace and dignity. He's very comfortable in front of large crowds and being in the spotlight. Isn't that right, John?
Mm-hmm. But think of it, Fred. If this works, and the debate somehow is compelling and miraculously comes out on our side, what's the next step to getting homosexuality removed from the DSM?
Well, if the Committee on Nomenclature makes the recommendation, it would go to the reference committee with
its newly elected president, Dr. John Spiegel.
I believe I can safely say the reference committee would choose to refer it to the president, or in other words, you, Fred, and theoretically you would approve it to go to the members for a vote, finally.
All the pieces are in place, Fred. All of them.
My word.
The lights dim on the stage right table and lights up on the center table. Barbara Giddings stands up.
John, are you ready yet?
Just a minute.
Well, hurry up. I want to see how you look.
Fryer enters wearing a blue tuxedo with a ruffled shirt that's at least 2 sizes too big and a rubber Nixon mask that he's altered. He is completely unrecognizable.
Oh, wow.
How is anyone supposed to take this get up seriously?
John, it's perfect.
Perfect? I look like a bad acid trip.
Well, you do, actually. But after the initial shock wears off, people will start listening to what you have to say.
I don't know. I mean, look at me.
Sorry. John, I'm here looking right at you. But even I can't see that it's you under there. If you didn't arrive here looking like you this morning, I would have no idea who was under all that. The size of the clothes make you look like a much smaller man. The mask is really well done. No one will be able to recognize you. Your identity is going to be well protected.
I suppose, but honestly.
Any word on whether your group of operatives were able to add your testimony to the agenda?
Well, actually, there was an odd, potentially positive development about that.
Oh?
Yes. Apparently, the incoming president will be approving the agenda for the conference this year. Under the old president, my colleagues didn't think it would get approved, but this new one might. They're going to be drafting the abstract this week and submitting it.
Really? Oh, John, that's wonderful news.
Oh, don't get too excited, Barbara. There's still a lot of hurdles that have to be cleared before we get to testify. They're all just a little lower now. Right now, only you and a select group within the Gay PA know that we're even thinking about it. No one else has a clue.
John, you just might make history.
The lights dim on the center table and come up now on the stage left table with Socarides. There's a knock on the door.
Ben Irving.
Charles, I just had the most stunning phone call.
Who?
Robert Spitzer,
Who's that?
one of the young hotshots on the nomenclature committee.
What about?
They're thinking about sponsoring a debate in Honolulu about whether homosexuality should be delisted from the DSM.
They're not.
And they want us to agree that we'd debate in favor of keeping it in before they recommend an addition to the agenda.
Would Perry Talkington even entertain that?
He's not going to be approving the agenda. He's going to defer it to Friedman.
Is that right?
It is. Perry is going to start passing the torch a little early.
Well, what did you tell? Who was it?
Robert Spitzer. I told him I couldn't speak for you, but that I would ask.
Irving, this is a tremendous opportunity. We will have 8,000 doctors in the room putting this issue to bed once and for all. Like, we can even include the findings of our committee to shore up our scientific standing. Irving, this is it. This is the opportunity.
Exactly what I was thinking, old man.
Wait.
What?
What doctors could Spitzer's committee possibly get to argue in favor of removing the classification?
Charles, that's maybe the best part.
What do you mean?
Does the name Ronald Gold ring a bell?
Should it?
Well, normally I should say no, because Mr. Gold has never contributed anything of value to society. But he did author a certain string of letters to the editor of the Post recently, accusing me of being homophobic and complicit in the deaths of thousands of homosexuals.
You mean?
I do. You and I will be debating the scientific merits of treating homosexuality as a disease with an intellectual neophyte who fancies himself as a gay activist in front of 8,000 of our peers. It will be the biggest home field advantage since Russia beat back the Nazis.
Oh, Irving, it's not even a fair fight.
I know that I should be emotionally evolved enough to not experience schadenfreude, but Charles, I'm afraid I'm going to enjoy it very much when we eviscerate him in Honolulu.
Blackout. End of Act 1. Folks, Act 2, Scene 1. Lights come up on Elgin's office. Morrow is alone in the office. He's standing up and staring out a window for a moment. He wipes away a tear, trying to hold himself together. After a moment, Elgin enters.
Hey, Tom. Sorry to keep you waiting. I was in a meeting with the JAG officer. About your case, actually. It ran a little long. Come, sit.
Morrow hurriedly walks over to the chair and sits, still regaining his composure.
You were? What did they say?
Well, they're almost finished with the paperwork. Just have a few more forms to get back, and then the separation will be official. Another few days, they think. A week at most.
I see.
So at the end of our last session, I had asked you to come up with a plan for after your separation. What have you come up with?
Well, I haven't been able to figure out much more than just getting home. But now, I'm not sure even if I want to.
Why is that? You said you had a good support system there.
Well, I do. But my mom, she told her church what was going on and asked them to pray for me. But since then, I guess some of the ladies want me to get better before I come back.
Well, that's what we're trying to get you, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing is, Doc, I don't know what better means.
Well, in a perfect world, it means no longer feeling homosexual urges, or if you do, recognizing that it's not a natural response and instead the product of some deeper psychological issue. By recognizing that, hopefully it will prompt you to self-examine what could be going on. And if that doesn't work, seek the help of a professional. And ideally, in the meantime, you find a stable heterosexual relationship and start living your life normally.
Well, shit, man.
What?
I mean, Doc, that isn't me. I know I'm only 20. I don't know a lot about life yet. If I'm honest, that was kind of why I joined the Navy. But Doc, there are some things I just know, man. One of them is that it will never work with me and a woman. Why would you think it would be okay for me to even do that to someone else? To live a lie and force some poor girl to live a lie with me?
Tom, the lie here is living that life would be a lie.
What does that even mean?
Well, now, Tom, take a breath here. I can see you're getting upset, and
Of course I am. Doc, this is my life here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. Do you get that? I can't stay in the Navy because I'm gay. I can't go home because I'm gay. I can't even walk down the street. I can't even walk down certain streets at night because I'm black and gay. Why is the solution to try to make me someone that I'm not, instead of trying to make the world understand who I am? Why? Why is trying to turn me into someone I can't be? Why is that the answer?
Elgin stays silent for a moment. He looks at Morrow for a long time.
Tom, you say you've never been with or even thought about being with a woman?
No, never.
What were you doing when all those boys were talking about girls?
I don't know. I guess I was trying to figure out what they were talking about. I guess I was trying to figure out what was wrong with them.
What was wrong with them?
Yeah. It didn't occur to me that I was the one who was different.
So what did you do?
I don't know exactly when, but I don't remember exactly when, but I remember one day going and asking my brother what all the other kids were talking about when they were talking about girls, what they wanted.
Do you remember how old you were?
10, maybe 11.
So what happened?
Well, he basically gave me the birds and bees talk as best as he knew anyway. That was, he could tell I wasn't into it, like, not at all.
Wasn't into what?
Girls. And what boys like about girls and what it all means.
How could he tell?
You have to ask him. But he could tell something was up. So he asked me what was wrong.
And what did you tell him?
I asked him if it was okay if I didn't want to do any of that stuff with the girls.
Go on.
Well, he said, yeah, that it was. He said that I was young yet and I might change my mind one day. So I asked him if I did. He said not to worry about it. Chances are that one day I would. Maybe I'm just a late bloomer. But he said if I didn't, I should tell him when, and I knew for sure he would look out for me. I didn't think too much of it back then, not for a while. For years later, though, when I was about 15, things were different. After this one summer, I grew a few inches and filled out some. Some of the girls at school, they noticed and started hanging around my locker a lot. I remember one day after school, my brother came into my room. He said he noticed the girls paying me more money. So I asked if it was okay if I still wasn't what I want, if they still weren't what I want. He said that it was. He said he figured that he said he had figured that out about me a while back. He sat down and said he had better to come to peace with it, that I had better to come to peace with it, or I was sooner rather than later, because if I didn't, I was either going to hurt someone else or hurt myself. We talked for hours then. I had a lot of questions. Most of them, he didn't even know the answer. But he kept promising me that we'll figure it out together. And we did. He's a good one, my brother.
Is your brother gay too, Tom?
Oh, hell no. I think he came out the womb with a girlfriend. He isn't exactly a gigolo, but he is all about the ladies. And the ladies has always been about him. You know what else he told me, Doc?
What's that?
He said the deck was already stacked. I was black. He said there was He said there will always be people out there who didn't understand that are like God. He said until the world changed, I need to be careful about who I told that.
CJ, you're muted.
Sorry. Sorry. He said the deck was already stacked against me because I was Black. He said there would also be people out there who didn't understand that I was God. He said that until the world changes, I need to be very careful about who I told. And that if the wrong people ever found out, that I should never let them feel the wrong thing. I didn't understand what he meant back then. Sure as hell would be learning to figure it out. So Doc, you tell me, why is my brother wrong? But are right.
Elgin stares at him for a moment.
Well, you see, it has a lot to do. Well, it's about the family unit, you see. In order for society to succeed, the family unit has to be strong. But wait, no, let me go back. So we're mammals, you see. We're built to be attracted to the opposite sex. It's who we are as species. When you're not, something's off. Now, when you're not attracted to the female mammal, I mean the female species, you know, in our cases, women, then it's not the natural biological function for her. Well, and the only thing strong enough to short circuit the function is our brains. Do you see what I mean?
Morrow looks at him completely confused.
Huh?
Elgin nods and regroups.
Yeah, that wasn't my best work. Tom, I want to explore more about one thing I'm not exactly clear on.
What's that?
All the books I've read that talk about how homosexuality is the result of something that happened when someone is very young. As you know, that's why I keep probing about your childhood. It could have been a lot of different things. It could have really been any one of a lot of different things. But based on what you've told me, I'm having a hard time figuring out what that would be.
Well, maybe that's because there wasn't.
Well, but we are all a product of how we grew up. The only reason I'm not where you are right now is because whatever happened to me when I was younger, it didn't affect me the same way.
Wait, so you're saying you could have been gay like me?
Maybe, if things had turned out differently in my childhood or with one of my parents.
So then, hold up. You think you could just turn off being straight? You think you could try with a guy, marry one if you could, and just resist the straight urges of yours?
Elgin doesn't respond and instead looks confused again.
Yeah, I don't think so. I didn't think so. It looks like our time's up, Doctor. I better go. I got a trend duty again.
Morrow gets up and exits. Elgin doesn't respond. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 2. Lights come up on Spiegel's dining room table, and stage right, Giddings' dining room table, but stage left, Spiegel's table is empty. Giddings and Fryer are at their table, stage right, and Fryer is holding an open letter. There's a knock on the door. Spiegel enters from off stage, looking a little bewildered. I'm sorry, this is bad stage direction here. We'll just say lights come up on Spiegel's dining room table. There's a knock on the door. Spiegel enters from on stage, looking a little bewildered.
Come in, Larry.
What's up, John? You sounded trouble on the phone.
I've had a call from Fred about the agenda for Honolulu.
Is he pulling the debate?
No, that's on. Actually, it's confirmed. The nomenclature committee is even sponsoring Mr. Gold's travel from New York.
Really? Well, that's great. So what's the matter, John?
Something else is added, something big. I'm not sure if it's going to help us or hurt us.
What's that?
Apparently, Dr. Henry Anonymous is going to speak at the convention as well.
I'm sorry, who?
Some psychiatrist, one of the members of the APA. According to Fred, he'll actually be speaking about what it's like to be a gay psychiatrist Fred said he'll be in some kind of disguise.
Lights dim on Spiegel and Hartman, who remain in tableau while the lights go up on Giddings' table.
So wait, it was approved? We're on? Oh, that's far out, man. John, this is incredible. Why aren't you more excited?
Well, there's another thing.
What's that?
According to the letter the APA president sent, our little bit of theater will occur following a debate sponsored by the Committee on Nomenclature on whether or not to remove homosexuality from the list of diseases.
Wait, what?
There's going to be a debate between Charles Socarides, Irvin Bieber, and some gay activist named Ronald Gold. You won't know this, but these two doctors wrote the books about treating homosexuality, and their findings were kind of a rebuttal to Kinsey. They've been used to continue justifying the classification of homosexuality as a disease in the first place. Barbara, they wrote the books on the subject.
Well, who's Ronald Gold?
I have no idea. Just some activist, I guess.
So let me see if I have this right. A gay activist about whom we know nothing is going to be debating two preeminent psychiatrists, doctors who will essentially be defending their life's work?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Then after that massacre, I get to stand on stage in a ridiculous costume and talk about what it's like being a gay psychiatrist, as if anyone would take me seriously by then.
This is terrible. Did your gay PA people set that up?
No, it wasn't us. We're all stumped as to who inside the nomenclature committee could even make that happen, much less what they would want to. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Socarides or Bieber pulling some strings, because of this kind of setup. I mean, it would just be what they want.
John, this means that now what you're going to say is, well, I mean, it's more important than ever. You're going to have to give the speech of your life.
Giddings gets up and starts to head off stage, but is interrupted.
No, Barbara, I need to think this all over. This isn't good.
Fryer starts to leave.
John, call me later. We can make this work. Somehow.
I don't know that we can. This is going to set us back for a generation.
Fryer exits. Lights dim on the Giddings dining room table and resume on Spiegel and Hartman.
John, whoever this Dr. Anonymous is, if he's going to be in some kind of costume, he's going to make a mockery of our argument. Is there some way Fred can stop it?
On the contrary, he seemed quite keen on the idea. I don't mind telling you, it surprised me.
I hope you weren't wrong about him, John.
No, he's the right man for the job, Larry. He wants the same things we do. I'm just not sure what he is thinking with this.
There are a lot of ways this can turn out really bad.
Well, the next few days they'll be interesting for sure.
When do you leave for Honolulu?
I leave the day after tomorrow. The family follows the day after. You?
I leave tomorrow evening. I better go.
I'll see you in Honolulu.
See you.
Hartman exits, blackout. Act 2, Scene 3. Lights come up on Elgin's office. Elgin is sitting in his chair. Morrow enters.
Hey, Tom, come sit.
Hey, Doc.
So this is our final session.
Yeah, I got the paperwork from Jag. Tomorrow it's all over.
What will you do?
I'll head into town for a few days before I fly home, since I probably won't be in Hawaii ever again.
Oh, that'll be nice. What will you do?
Just be a tourist. Maybe I should go to one of those gay bars here.
There are gay bars in Honolulu?
There are. The one I've heard of called Lava Lava seems cool. Doc, I got a little heated in our last session, and I'm sorry. I know you think you're trying to help.
Tom, don't apologize. These are difficult topics. An emotional reaction is to be expected. You're hardly the first one to blow up at me.
But I am the first gay one.
That's true. And that's what I wanted to talk about in our last session here. Tom, like you say, you're my first homosexual patient, and I don't feel like I've served you all that well. I thought I was well versed in the literature, but I guess the old saying is true. You don't know what you don't know.
Why are you telling me this?
Well, it just so happens there's a meeting tomorrow in Honolulu, and thousands of psychiatrists will be coming in from all over the country.
Oh, great.
Surprisingly, the topic of homosexuality is going to be discussed and apparently even debated.
Debated? How would you?
Yeah, from what I can tell by reading the different materials, it appears they're going to debate whether or not homosexuality should be considered a disease anymore.
What?
Apparently, it's a serious discussion. And right after the debate, an actual gay psychiatrist is going to speak.
So, wait a minute. What happens if they decide if it's not a disease?
Well, then it's not. People like me won't tell people like you that you're sick anymore.
Wait, so you're telling me a bunch of doctors have the power to decide if I'm sick or not? So they're going to debate it? If they decide I'm not, then gay people are sick no more, and that's that?
Yes, that's about it.
Well, that's some shit right there. And everyone just agrees with them then?
Well, it'll be a while, but eventually, sure. I mean, nobody argues with science.
But the Navy won't care, will they?
Well, it's 1973 now. Give it 5 years.
Yeah, more like 10.
Oh, for sure by then.
So, why are you telling me this, Doc? You think there's a chance you might agree with them?
Well, I'm telling you this because while I'm at the convention, I'm going to ask around to find a doctor from Chicago. If I can find one, I'd like to tell them about you.
Doc, I thought you couldn't talk about
Oh, no, I won't. That's why I'm asking. If you don't want me to, I won't. But I thought if I did find one and I told him just a little bit about you, then maybe he'd agree to see you pro bono for free.
So he gonna tell me I'm sick too?
I was thinking more to help you adapt to what's going to be a very different life than you were planning to have in the Navy.
Oh, I mean, I guess. I don't know if I'll go.
Well, if it's okay, I'll write to you when you get home, if I have any luck.
Yeah, I guess that'll be all right.
Elgin gets up and motions toward the door.
I've enjoyed our time together, Tom. I'm sorry I was under these circumstances.
Yeah, me too, Doc.
As Morrow heads towards the door, he stops and turns around.
And Doc, you can write me too. Maybe tell me if those doctors decide if I'm sick or not.
Elgin nods and smiles as Morrow exits. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 4. Lights come up on a side street in Honolulu. As the lights come up, we see Giddings is standing alone in a corner. On the other corner is Spitzer standing in tableau. Giddings is carefully scanning around. After a moment, Fryer enters.
John, there you are.
Here I am.
Okay, we've checked into the room. The whole team is there ready to make you over. When they're done with you, no one will recognize you.
Fryer looks at the key for a moment, but doesn't take it right away. When he finally does, Giddings lets out a sigh of relief.
Are you really sure about this, Barbara? This is out there, even for you.
John, I am very sure you're going to make history.
One way or the other, I guess.
We better get going.
Fryer nods and exits. Giddings takes a deep breath and follows. The lights dim on that side of the stage and raise up on Spitzer, who is also standing and waiting. Finally, Gold enters, visibly nervous.
Good morning, Mr. Gold. Glad to see you've made it.
There really are a lot of people here.
There are. Looks like just under 8,000.
Oh, that many, you say?
Indeed. This will be a good day if all goes well.
So, hey, it looks like, from what I was reading, that a gay psychiatrist is going to speak after our debate.
That's right. I was meaning to tell you, it looks like we'll get 2 bites at this apple.
How do you mean?
Well, if for some reason after the debate, some people still need some convincing, psychiatrists will be speaking to the group in more direct terms that any fence sitters may be able to relate to, sort of speaking their language, if you catch my meaning.
Why not have him debate instead of me then?
Well, for one, whoever the psychiatrist is, he will be in a disguise to protect his identity.
Really?
And secondly, because, well, to be frank, it is important that the activists are heard on this subject in a way that fully represents not only their collective beliefs, but also shows how our policies affect everyday people. Well, and you wrote those letters in the Post.
Oh, yeah, that.
So this way we'll be allowing Drs. Socarides and Bieber the chance to, well, face their accuser. Regrettably, the intended moderator in this case isn't exactly impartial on this topic at hand, so we've had to make a change. Come, we should go.
They start to move toward the same side of the stage Giddings exited.
Wait, I thought you were the moderator.
Not anymore, as I'm no longer impartial on the matter. After some intense discussions with my colleagues, both inside and outside the committee, I've formed my own strong opinion.
Gold stops Spitzer.
Wait, what do you mean? I thought you said you'd give us a fair shake.
Well, I did say we would get 2 bites at this apple now, didn't I?
Spitzer exit. Gold pauses for a moment, then follows quickly behind.
Wait, so you're on my side now?
Gold exit as he chases after Spitzer. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 5. Lights come up on the stage at the convention. A podium is center stage, and there is a table on each side. 4 chairs are seated behind the tables. Facing the audience, Friedman enters and goes to the podium, motioning for everyone to be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to begin my presidency of the American Psychiatric Association by giving some appreciation to Dr. Talkington for his leadership for this last year. Perry, you leave big shoes to fill, and I will strive to follow your example. We now turn our attention to what is something of a first for our convention, a debate between practicing psychiatrists and an outspoken critic of the organization. At issue, should the APA continue to classify homosexuality as a mental disorder? Arguing in favor, please welcome Dr. Charles Socarides.
Socarides enters and sits down on the chair farthest stage left.
Harvard educated with a postdoctorate from Columbia, Dr. Socarides is the author of the seminal work, The Overt Homosexual. He has been practicing for 19 years and has devoted a large portion of his practice to offering care to homosexual patients. Joining him in the affirmative, please welcome Dr. Irving Bieber.
Bieber enters and takes his seat next to Socarides.
Dr. Bieber is a graduate from New York University Medical College, and in his illustrious career has served as an adjunct professor at both NYU and Yale. As all of you know, his book, Homosexuality, a Psychoanalytic Study of Male Homosexuals, together with Dr. Socarides' treatise on the same subject, has helped inform how the APA has viewed and treated homosexuality for a generation. Now, on the other side of the issue, arguing in favor of changing the DSM will be Dr. Robert Spitzer.
Spitzer enters and sits in the seat closest to the edge of stage right.
A graduate from Cornell and NYU, Dr. Spitzer is also on faculty at Columbia University and is himself a member of the Committee on Nomenclature, which is sponsoring today's debate.
Gold enters and looks around the audience and freezes for a moment, noticing Spitzer guides him to his seat next to him. Gold is visibly nervous.
Joining Dr. Spitzer is our activist, Mr. Ronald Gold. Mr. Gold is a former writer at Vanity Fair and has written several letters published in the Washington Post, critical of how the APA views homosexuality.
It's critical of me, especially.
Yes, indeed. The nomenclature committee has asked me to moderate our debate today. And so with that, we'll just go ahead and jump into it. Since 1952, in the first edition of what we call the DSM, the Diagnostic of Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, homosexuality has been viewed as pathological, an illness to be treated and if possible cured. Since then, thousands of doctors have treated homosexual patients who have come to us for help.
Here, here.
However, the laws of unintended consequences seems to be immutable. In the 21 years since homosexuality landed in the DSM, the view of our organization on homosexuals has been used against them in ways that we couldn't have imagined. So were we right in 1952 and 1968? Or were we wrong? To start us off in our discussion, I wonder if our activist, Mr. Gold, would like to begin.
Friedman looks at Gold, who looks up at him in a look of surprised terror.
Actually, let's start with the affirmative side. Dr. Irving Bieber, then.
Thank you, Dr. Friedman. Three questions. Three questions seem most relevant to our discussion today. One, is homosexuality a normal variant of sexual development and sexual functioning? Two, if it's not, how should it be categorized? Three, does the classification of homosexuality as a disease actually make life harder for homosexuals? So let's take these one by one. Is homosexuality a normal variant of sexual development? No. The long-term study my colleagues and I concluded in 1962, along with several years of subsequent study and extensive clinical experience, leave no doubt homosexuality is not merely a variant of normal adult activity. Since it is abnormal behavior, then it must have a cause. I have repeatedly emphasized that what would be otherwise normal and happy heterosexual children are kept from their natural heterosexual nature by dysfunctional relationships between parents and child. Typically, mothers of homosexuals are inappropriately close, binding, often seductive, and tend to inhabit boyish aggressiveness. The fathers, meanwhile, are overtly or covertly hostile. This is expressed in detachment, streaks of cruelty, or frank brutality. I'm sure if we asked Mr. Gold, our learned activist, what his family life was like, he would concur.
Mr. Gold, care to comment?
Gold shakes his head no.
As I was saying, the relationship between the parents of a homosexual child is generally poor. Often, the husband is held in contempt by a wife who prefers her son. The pre-homosexual child may be exposed to rejection and hostility from other significant males, such as brothers. So the homosexual looks to other men for acceptance using sexual tools and mistakes that acceptance as natural byproduct of life, rather than recognizing it for what it is, a sexual substitute for the lack of acceptance by male authority figures during their developmental years. So then, we get to the second question. How should we categorize homosexuality? In my view, simply labeling it as sexual deviation is too ambiguous. While it does, quote unquote, deviate from the norm, that's not enough of a descriptor. It might be more accurate to describe homosexuality as an adaptation to inhibited heterosexuality. As for the final question, are we making things worse for homosexuals because we classify their deviation as a pathology? That's simply nonsense. Discrimination against homosexuals existed long before modern psychiatry. However, modern psychiatry has offered them a chance to overcome their homosexuality through a variety of treatments. We offer hope. Besides, there's no reason to believe that if the APA were to remove homosexuality from the DSM, there would be any kind of significant alteration to how society treats them. Mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, removal of homosexuality from the DSM is tantamount to the APA officially declaring that homosexuality is normal.
Socarides bursts out into brief applause.
Well stated, my friend.
Perhaps now, Mr. Gold.
Gold shakes his head nervously. Spitzer places his hand gently on Gold's shoulders.
Dr. Friedman, may I rebut that?
Certainly.
Homosexuality, by definition, is really just an interest in sexual relations with members of the same sex. Now, before we can decide whether or not it's a psychiatric illness, we have to set some parameters around what rises to a level of an illness and what doesn't. We need to have some criteria for what a psychiatric illness or disorder is. Does the condition regularly cause a person distress, or does it regularly cause some impairment in their social effectiveness or functioning? By either of those standards, clearly homosexuality is not an illness. How do we know this? Because the overwhelming majority of some homosexuals are satisfied with their sexual orientation, and they demonstrate no generalized impairment. They're happy being who they are. So, if homosexuality does not meet the criteria for psychiatric disorder, what is it? It's simply one form of sexual behavior. In short, homosexuality is only a problem when the person who is a homosexual is troubled by their own identity. And in most of those cases, they wouldn't be troubled if we stopped calling them sick.
Not true. The central question is this: is homosexuality a normal sexual variant that develops like left-handedness does in some people? Or does it represent some kind of disturbance in sexual development? There is no question in my mind. Every male homosexual goes through an initial stage of heterosexual development. And in all homosexuals, there has been a disturbance of normal development as a result of fears, which produce anxieties and inhibitions of sexual function. I'd like to give you an analogy. In polio, you get a range of severity. Some kids are totally paralyzed. Their walking function is gone. Others are able to walk with braces. Others have enough muscle left so that they can be rehabilitated and can actually get to walk by themselves. What you have in a homosexual adult is a person whose heterosexual function is crippled like the legs of a polio victim. What are we going to call this? Are you going to say this is normal? Would you say that a person who has legs that have been actually paralyzed by polio is a normal person, even though the polio is no longer active?
See? This is precisely the definition homosexuals refuse to accept. Homosexuals don't want to be viewed as being ill or injured. They want to be thought of as broken. They don't want to be thought of as broken.
Homosexuality is a psychiatric injury and belongs in any psychiatric manual. To take what is really the most injured homosexual and say he shouldn't be in the DSM, that seems to me to be wild.
It seems wild to you because you have as your value system that everybody should be heterosexual.
You think it's a value system? Do I think all homosexuals today should become heterosexuals? Absolutely not. There are many homosexuals, maybe 2/3 of them, for whom heterosexuality is no longer even possible. They're too far gone.
But rather than accept and be comfortable with who they are, they should feel that their heterosexuality is injured or crippled.
If they want to be accurate, yes.
I cannot function homosexually, but I would not regard it as an injury. You wouldn't either. We come into this world according to psychoanalytic notions with a polymorphous perverse sexuality.
I don't accept that.
The animal kingdom suggests that you should. Most of us become heterosexual and some of us become homosexual.
I'm surprised that you, as a biologist, could talk that way. Every mammalian, every animal whose reproduction depends on heterosexual mating has inborn biological mechanisms to guarantee heterosexuality. Heterosexuality is mammalian instinct.
Homosexuality in mammals is quite common, Doctor. In fact, it's an adaptation that happens quite naturally. We also know it's been with humans for thousands of years. We know from recorded history that ancient Greece had an institutionalized form of homosexuality.
I will only claim expertise in the current Western culture. I can give you a group of cultures in which no homosexuality exists. One where it's totally absent is in the Israeli kibbutz.
That's not true.
Gentlemen, I believe Mr. Gold would like to be heard.
Oh, that's not true. What he said about the kibbutz.
Gold looks around. Nobody is speaking. All the attention is on him. He pauses, trying to gather himself. He's quiet for a while.
And just how would you know that? Have you studied the kibbutz in Israel, York? Because I have.
Well, I wouldn't say I studied them.
And here lies the problem, gentlemen. We are the products of science. Work follows the scientific method. We deal in fact, not opinions.
Well, it's not my opinion that you're wrong. It is a fact that you're wrong. For a few years, I had sex with a man from a kibbutz in New York on a regular basis. Maybe you've just been going to the wrong ones. Maybe get out of Scarsdale once in a while and head down to the Bronx.
Friedman and Spitzer laugh, and from offstage a roar of laughter erupts from the crowd.
If I may, Dr. Friedman.
Friedman looks at Gold to speak up, but struggling, Gold hangs his head sheepishly.
Go ahead, Dr. Socarides.
It will come as no surprise to anyone that I support the statements of Dr. Bieber wholeheartedly. In fact, part of why I've been looking forward to this panel is because I can today announce that the task force on homosexuality appointed by the New York District Branch of the APA has unanimously concluded that this illness is the result of a faulty familial environment. We found that homosexuality represents a disorder of sexual development and is not normal sexual behavior like Dr. Spitzer would have you believe. In fact, as many as 1/3 of homosexuals after treatment become exclusively heterosexual as a result of psychotherapy. 1/3. The most extensive comparison study, published just 11 years ago, included 106 homosexual males and 100 heterosexual males. In the study, every one of the homosexual men had an unhealthy parent-child relationship that simply wasn't found in the heterosexual control group. Our research found that the majority of mothers were too close binding and interfered in the development of their son's heterosexual development. The study concluded with certainty that a homosexual male is the product of a dysfunctional parental home environment. To conclude then that homosexuality is normal and naturally occurring is to abandon for them any hope of recovery. I can't accept that, or I would be turning my back on my own son. It was not my intention to be personal here today, but my son suffers from homosexuality, and that means I have to admit that somewhere along the line, perhaps as a result of my divorce or my being too detached because of my work, my ex-wife, and I somehow caused in my son the very thing I've devoted much of my life trying to heal in others. To conclude then that this is natural is to conclude that his life will amount to nothing. I can't accept that. And not just because I love my son, but because science tells us there's another way. Remember, psychiatrists have been in the forefront in helping homosexuals. We are your allies, Mr. Gold. It was Freud who opened the gates of freedom and humanity to the homosexual. And it was others after him, investigators who dared, who were not afraid of homosexuals, who had no homophobia, as we're accused of having, who could therefore treat those homosexuals who won't serve far gone, that they sought our help. In addition to our findings, our New York task force is also unanimous in calling for the end of all discriminatory laws and practices that target homosexuals. Sick people should not be persecuted because they're sick. Again, I say we are unanimous in that.
Well done, Dr. Socarides. A powerful statement indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Socarides.
Friedman looks at Gold, who doesn't return his eye contact. He then looks at Spitzer pleadingly. Spitzer nods and looks at Gold and whispers in his ear for a moment. Gold nods and looks out at the crowd and pulls a folded paper from his pocket. He stares at it for a moment. Spitzer then looks up at Friedman and smiles.
Okay, at this point, I think that we need to hear from our activist, Mr. Gold.
Gold begins to feel less nervous. He looks at Spitzer, who nods at him reassuringly.
Doctors, I need you to stop. You're making me sick. I have come to the unshakable conclusion that the theory of homosexuality as an illness is a pack of lies, concocted out of myths for mostly political purposes. You have allowed your profession to be used as a cornerstone of oppression.
Go ahead, sorry. Gold looks at Spitzer, who nods encouragingly.
To be viewed as psychologically disturbed in our society is to be thought of and treated as a second-class citizen. You can't have certain things. You're not entitled to what everyone else has. This second-class status is not good for mental health. But that isn't the worst thing about a psychiatric diagnosis. The worst thing is that we gay people believe it. Nothing creates more anxiety than not feeling normal. And nothing makes you feel more abnormal than people telling you that you're sick. Now, this may come as a surprise, but I knew something was different about me when I was 14 years old. I knew I wasn't like the other boys, and I knew precisely what that meant. I told my family, and they didn't want me to be sick, so they sent me to see a psychiatrist. He shot me so full with sodium pentothal, it scared me out of my wits. But I went willingly to other psychiatrists, and they all said the same thing, that a part of me I didn't want to give up had to be excised. But I didn't want to lose me, and I struggled to take the pain away. I got lost in drugs, heroin mostly, and very nearly died. I wound up at the Menninger Clinic, and there I was convinced that the cure to my pain and my addiction was a change in sexual orientation. When it was agreed then that I was done with treatment, I knew I had only done half the work. I had conquered my drug addiction, but there was still the homosexuality to deal with. But then a strange thing happened. I became proud of myself for kicking the drugs. I became happy. It was the first time since this whole thing had started that I felt proud of myself for anything. I mean, just feeling like I was good enough to do something like that made me feel a lot better about myself. Then I realized that all I needed to feel love was to like myself better. Soon after, I met a young man, and we had a good and happy life for 12 years. When we broke up, it wasn't because of what you would read in the psychiatric literature. Our problems were remarkably ordinary. You'd sooner read about them in Red Book.
Friedman and Spitzer laugh. More laughter is heard from the crowd off stage. Gold looks at Spitzer with a new confidence, and Spitzer nods in acknowledgement.
The man I've been with for the last 2 years now is warm and loving, and he is kind. He loves me and accepts my love in return. We are happy and we are unencumbered by guilt. Dr. Socrates, there are advantages to being gay. Your son needs to know that. There is a community of people out there who will love him, who will accept him. We are vibrant and we are beautiful. And he may even find for himself a calling to help others. But he will also face challenges. And he will have to learn, like I have, how not to be an accomplice to his own oppression. I've had to fight hard to be at the place I'm at now. I've shucked off the shell of my own self-oppression, and I now know that whatever is wrong with me isn't because of my homosexuality. Now, I know that right now, the gay liberation movement is fighting with the psychiatric profession, but we don't have to be. I know that there are men and women who come to you asking for help because they're miserable being homosexual. But what we're asking is for you to consider the possibility that maybe they're miserable because they keep getting told they're supposed to be. The truth is, I'm not that different from you. I'm happy. It took a long and winding road to get there, but I am truly happy. I worry about the same things you do. Paying the bills, my parents' health. Will my neighbor's kids ever stop practicing that damn clarinet? But I'm happy. There's nothing really wrong with me. I think you know that. I think a lot of people in this audience today, I think you know that. But I think that maybe you're afraid to speak up. I think maybe you understand that homosexuals are only sick because you keep telling them that they are. You keep allowing society to tell them they are. I think you understand that that's what is making them sick, not their homosexuality. Now you have a chance to speak up. Now you have a chance to be the majority. Don't let a handful of people tell the public what you think. Don't be afraid to tell the world that gay is okay, that gay is good. We're counting on you.
Gold sits back in his chair. As the room falls silent, Spitzer is beaming at him. Soon, off stage, We hear a lonely and slow set of applause. After a moment, the applause grows, and in the distance it becomes a roar. Gold chokes up as Spitzer pats him on the back. After a moment, Friedman looks at Socarides and Bieber. Shortly thereafter, they both stand up and angrily walk off the stage as the applause continues. After a moment, Friedman looks at Spitzer, who nods, taps Gold on the shoulder, and motions towards the exit. The two men get up and exit off stage as the applause continues.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for the spirited debate. You've all given us so much to think about. Much to think about indeed. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn it over the dais to our new chair of the reference committee, Dr. John Spiegel.
Spiegel enters. The two shake hands at the podium and Friedman exits.
Thank you, President Friedman. Thank you to all of you as well for being here today and for considering these important and consequential questions. Dr. Friedman has asked me just this morning to introduce our next speaker, who has caused quite the buzz around the convention hall this week and whose comments I am very much looking forward to hearing. Please welcome to the stage a man who is calling himself Dr. Henry Anonymous, and his guest, Ms. Barbara Giddings, co-founder of the New York chapter of the Daughters of Bilitis.
Giddings enters, followed by Fryer in his disguise. Giddings sits in the chair earlier occupied by Spitzer, and Fryer sits in the chair previously occupied by Gold. We hear mumblings in the crowd as Fryer enters as Dr. Anonymous.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. What Dr. Anonymous is about to do requires a tremendous amount of courage, and I would like to personally offer my appreciation and congratulations to him for taking the risks and speaking to us today. Dr. Anonymous.
Spiegel steps back from the dais and extends his hand to Fryer, who shakes it. Spiegel then sits in the seat earlier occupied by Bieber as Fryer steps up to the dais. He shoots a look at Giddings, who nods encouragingly.
Thank you, Dr. Spiegel. I am in disguise tonight in order that I might speak freely and without conjuring up too much regard for the particulars of who I happen to be. Please then focus on my words and less about who is speaking them. I am a homosexual. I am a psychiatrist. I, like most of you in this room, am a member of the APA and am proud of that membership. However, today I am, insofar as it is possible, a we. I attempt today to speak for many of my fellow gay members of the APA, as well as for myself. You see, when we gather at these conventions, we have somewhat glibly come to call ourselves the Gay PA. And it's been brought to our attention that it was time that real flesh and blood stand up before this organization and ask to be listened to and understood. As psychiatrists who are homosexual, we must know our place and what we must do to be successful. If our goal is to high academic appointment, a level of earning capacity equal to our fellows, or admission to the Psychoanalytic Institute, we must make certain that no one in a position of power is aware of or even suspects our sexual orientation or gender identity. We cannot be seen with our real friends, our real homosexual family, lest our secret be known and our fates be sealed. Those who are willing to speak out openly will do so only if they have little to lose. As psychiatrists who are homosexual, we must look carefully at the power which lies in our hands, which is to define the health of those in our charge. We have our own particular understanding of what it is to be a healthy homosexual in a world which sees that as an impossible contradiction. what is it like to be a homosexual who is also a psychiatrist? Most of us gay PA members do not wear our badges into the Lava Lava, a gay bar here in Honolulu. If we did, we would risk the derision of all the non-psychiatrist homosexuals. As you saw just a few moments ago, there is so much negative feeling in the homosexual community towards psychiatrists, and for good reason. Beyond that, in our own hometowns, the chances that in any gathering of homosexuals, there's likely to be any number of people who might try to hurt us professionally if they could. Finally, as homosexuals who are psychiatrists, we seem to possess a unique ability to marry ourselves to institutions rather than our wives or lovers. Many of us work 20 hours daily to protect the very institutions that chew us up and spit us out once they know or choose to acknowledge the truth. In the blink of an eye, our entire lives and income and earning potential are thrown into disarray and insecurity. It is frightening. Those who are the financial and career challenges that weigh so heavily on gay psychiatrists. It is hard to do our best work when we have to be so mindful of so much else. But those burdens are nothing compared to the tolls taken on our souls when we are told that we have to tell other homosexuals that they're sick. To all of you straight and gay, please, when homosexuals come to you for treatment, do what you know is right. Ignore the DSM as long as it continues to be wrong. Let us no longer be accomplices to society's crimes. Let these patients know that they are all right. Teach them everything they need to know. Refer them to the sources of information that will help them come to realize there is beauty to be had in this life, in their community. Let us all tie our courage to the sticking place and finally acknowledge that this was a mistake to call homosexuals sick. And it's a mistake of our own hubris to continue to do so. Earlier today, you heard one of the doctors refer to a study from 1962 that involved a group of 110 homosexual men. What you did not hear was that the study was done using exclusively subjects who were already in therapy. In other words, those were men who felt so bad about being called sick that they believed it and sought help. Yet most of you in this room know full well that the vast majority of homosexuals don't suffer from such self-imposed oppression. Now I speak primarily to the other members of the gay PA who are present here today. Earlier, Mr. Gold quite brilliantly called on us to stand up for our beliefs. I quite agree. When you are with fellow professionals who are denigrating the faggots and the queers, don't just stand idly by. Don't tolerate it. I know we have a lot to lose. By speaking out against that kind of behavior, we may ourselves be branded and accused. We may not be considered for that professorship. The analyst down the street may stop referring us his overflow. Our supervisor may ask us to take a leave of absence. We may get disinvited from our employment. But I say it is an even bigger risk in not living fully in our humanity. We know what's right, and every time we ignore it, we lose ourselves a little bit. We lose little pieces of our soul. And more to the point, we lose our argument.
Fryer looks at Giddings and pauses.
This is the greatest loss of all. How can we expect our peers to respect the homosexuals in their charge if we as homosexual psychiatrists can't respect ourselves enough to face the risk that comes with stepping out from behind our carefully crafted personas? If we want our peers to no longer consider homosexuality a disease, we psychiatrists have to decide that first.
Fryer pauses for a long moment and takes a half step back from the dais and slowly removes his mask. Giddings and Spiegel are both shocked. Once it's off, we can hear oohs and ahs from the crowd as Fryer steps back up to the dais.
The best way to show that is to show who we truly are. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. John Fryer, and I am a homosexual and a psychiatrist.
The room quickly erupts into another roar of applause, followed shortly by Dr. Friedman and Giddings, who both stand up and continue the applause. Fryer looks to the both of them and out to the crowd as the applause continue. After a moment, he wipes a tear from his eye. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 6. Lights come up on a street in Honolulu. Giddings is standing alone when Gold approaches. She notices him and walks toward him quickly.
Mr. Gold?
You're Barbara Giddings. You were up on stage with Dr. Anonymous, or I guess Dr. Fryer.
I was. Listen, I wanted to tell you that your debate was, well, it was just wonderful. You spoke so well. You really represented us well.
Fryer enters the stage and walks toward them. Gold recognizes him instantly.
Thank you so much. But this man was amazing. So moving.
You're too kind, thank you. But Barbara made me do it.
Is that right?
Guilty.
Are you coming out with us tonight?
No, this old girl is going to call it a night early. I'm still on East Coast time. Perhaps Mr. Gold would care to join.
Oh, please, call me Ron. And go where?
Well, our little covert group.
What was it you called it? The KPA?
Yeah, exactly. We'll be gathering together socially tonight at Lava Lava. You would be most welcome.
A bunch of gay psychiatrists drinking in a tacky gay hula bar. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Excellent. Just do us a favor, please. Do not tell anyone. Today went well, but it's not time to push our luck.
Of course, you have my word.
Great. We'll see you at 8. Barbara, can we talk for a moment?
Of course.
Fryer and Giddings exit. A moment later, Spitzer enters and goes to Gold.
Well done, Mr. Gold. Well done.
Hey, thanks for covering for me while I got my sea legs. That was a lot of people.
Nonsense. You were very eloquent. I've spoken to some of the members of the committee. They're much more open to changing the DSM after today, but they may take some arm twisting.
Really? That's wonderful. Hey, things got pretty heated between you and Dr. Bieber. Is everything...
I think it's safe to say that Dr. Bieber and I will be having heated arguments for years to come.
Say, I was just... Do you remember what that Dr. Anonymous, what Dr. Fryer said about his friends, the gay PA?
Yes, I was surprised. I'd never heard anything like that.
Well, it just so happens that I just ran into Dr. Fryer, and he invited me to where they'll be gathering tonight, at a bar called Lava Lava at 8. I said I'd go. Would you care to join?
Oh, I would. Yes, I should very much like to know more about them.
Okay, well, they were very keen on me not telling anyone, so you'll have to, I don't know, pretend to be gay.
Beg your pardon?
They might clam up if they think I brought a straight psychiatrist with me.
I see your point. Well, how do I...
Just don't say anything that a straight person would. Come on, I'll explain.
They exit. Elgin enters from the opposite side of the stage. He stops.
Lava Lava at 8 p.m.
Elgin exits. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 7. Lights come up on the Lava Lava Bar, a Tiki-themed dive bar. Hartman and Morrow are each standing with drinks several feet apart. Hartman smiles and walks toward him.
Good evening.
I
So what brings you out tonight?
heard about this place, wanted to check it out.
I see. Have you been in Honolulu long?
A couple of years. Came here for work.
Oh, what do you do?
Nothing now. My job is over.
Oh, I see. Well, what will you do now?
Still working on figuring that out. How about you? What do you do?
I'm a psychiatrist.
Oh, hell no.
Morrow exits quickly. As he's leaving, Fryer enters. Hartman sees him.
Fryer, over here.
Larry, good to see you. Thank you for coming.
I was very proud of you tonight. Very proud. Say, how is it I didn't know about the gay PA sooner?
We are, that is to say, we're very good at hiding.
There are people that I never would have guessed.
Well, I'm glad you aren't offended when I asked you to come and join us. You're the only straight psychiatrist who's ever been invited to one of our gatherings.
Oh,
But we all respect you and what you've been trying to accomplish with your committee and with the Young Turks. A little bird told me that it was your group who put up Friedman and Spiegel as candidates.
They made their own decisions. We were just thrilled to back their candidacy.
Ah, spoken like a true politician.
Gold and Spitzer enter.
Dr. Fryer.
John, please. It's just John, and he's Larry and Robert.
Hi, John. I hope you don't mind. I tagged along when Ronnie here told me about it.
Gold looks at Spitzer with a surprised look and whispers, Ronnie?
Well, I had no idea you were a friend of Dorothy.
Oh, yeah. Good friends.
Robert, good to see you. And you're Mr. Gold.
I am.
Well, I need to talk to a few other people. I'll circle back. Really glad you could make it, Ronnie.
Fryer exits.
Who is Dorothy?
From The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland.
I don't know Judy Garland. Do all gay people know her?
Honey, we are Judy Garland. So where do you live, Larry?
In Massachusetts, just outside Boston.
Oh, I see. And you're a psychiatrist too, I gather.
I am.
Dr. Hart, Larry here is the chair of the APA's Committee of Concerned Psychiatrists and the unofficial leader of a group of liberal psychiatrists who call themselves the Young Turks.
Oh, is that right?
You might find that they'll be rather supportive of any initiative that pushes the APA into a direction that might give it a social conscience.
Well, we do what we can.
What do you mean?
Well, over the years, we've encouraged the APA to adopt statements in support of women's rights and against the war in Vietnam. We got started a few years back when a few of us couldn't stomach what happened at Kent State.
Wow. Have you ever tried to take on the homosexuality inclusion in the DSM?
Larry would know that in order for something like that to happen, he would have to mount a strategy so complex on so many multiple different fronts that it would almost be impossible.
What do you mean?
Well, he would have to very carefully lay the groundwork. First, you see, Ronnie, the APA is a complex organization. If anything is to get changed, say in the DSM, for example, there would be a rigorous process it would have to go through. Lots of hurdles, you understand, so that something couldn't just happen on a whim. For example, the Committee on Nomenclature and Statistics would first have to recommend the change. Indeed, it's the only committee that can. But if it did, that recommendation would then have to go to the Preference Committee, or the Reference Committee. They're the ones who decide what does and what does not get referred to the APA president, who would then determine a vote of the broader organization. So for Larry or his group to try and influence all of those independently moving parts, he'd have to find someone on the nomenclature committee who would be open to the discussion, and then find someone to approach them as a third party, so he could stay distance from it. But before any of that would happen, he would have to make sure that there was a powerful ally on the reference committee who could swing them to approve that change. And then, Ronnie, he would have to feel extremely confident that whoever that APA president was, he would be at least sympathetic to the idea.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. Then Larry and his group would also have to hope that whoever he reached out to vicariously on the nomenclature committee, was the kind of sort who would be observant enough to recognize these different elements falling into place. So he would have the courage to steer the committee in the right direction.
That would be a lot of work.
The more you talk, the more I wonder if I haven't heard your voice before.
It would have to be such a solid plan, it could even sustain a curveball.
Like having another activist reach out to another doctor to put on a costume and speak in front of their peers.
That would be an unexpected curveball indeed.
Indeed. And it's been recently brought to my attention, gay activists aren't the most communicative or cooperative bunch.
Elgin enters the bar in his Navy uniform.
Try changing a light bulb.
Spitzer laughs, Gold follows. After a moment, Hartman looking confused, Elgin sees Gold and walks up to him.
Mr. Gold, you're here.
I am. I'm sorry. You're in the Army?
Navy, actually. And you're Dr. Spitzer.
Robert, your name, Lieutenant?
My name is Elgin. Anthony Elgin. I'm a psychiatrist with the Navy.
Lieutenant, should you be here in uniform?
Fryer returns.
Oh God, no, but I had to see Mr. Gold and Dr. Fryer. Oh my goodness.
What's up?
Elgin begins to choke up.
Mr. Gold, Dr. Fryer, I've made a terrible mistake.
Oh, what's wrong, son?
For the last few weeks, I've had this patient, a young sailor in his 20s, who was caught by his peers in a compromising position with another sailor.
Uh-oh.
As you know, the Navy takes a pretty dim view of homosexuality, and the young man owned up to it right away.
I take it that was the end of his career.
It was. It takes the Navy some time to complete a separation, but in the meantime, I saw him as a patient. I'm afraid I just went by the book, you understand? I went by all the books. I've never had a homosexual patient before, and so I didn't have any experience. I mean, my God, I talked to him about sailing.
Spitzer, Gold, and Hartman all look at each other bewilderingly, while Hartman mouths, sailing?
I almost convinced this man, all of 20 years old, that he was broken. I very nearly did. If I were a better psychiatrist, had more experience, it could have been really bad. I was trying to convince him that he needed to resolve his dysfunctional childhood pathology so that he could become a happy heterosexual. At the very moment this kid's entire life was falling apart, when the life he'd been planning on was being taken away from him completely, instead of trying to help him cope with that, I was trying to convince him he was broken and that his problems would get worse if he didn't get fixed. I came to the conference today because I wanted to see if I could find someone in Chicago who would see him pro bono to help him deal with everything. Talking with that young man over the last few weeks, I began to doubt if what I had learned was right, you know? He didn't fit. He didn't have any of the history that I understood he should. His parents were great. His home life was sound. He was just gay. And the only reason he had a problem with it was because the Navy did. He was otherwise happy and, to be honest, unapologetic himself. So today I came to the conference not really knowing what to expect. I didn't know what I thought anymore. But then I heard the debate and saw you, Dr. Spitzer, and how you just shut those other doctors down. And I heard you, Mr. Gold, and it was so moving. It rang so true. And then, oh my gosh, the speech Dr. Fryer gave and his courage. After today's sessions, I think I was wrong. I think I've done a terrible thing to this young man. I really wish I would have known sooner. I may have really done damage to this young man.
Visibly moved, Hartman reaches out to Elgin and grabs his shoulder.
Lieutenant, come with me. I'll buy you a drink and give you the name of some colleagues in Chicago. If you can still reach the young man, we may be able to give him someone to talk to who feels like we do.
Really?
Yes.
Dr. Hartman?
Yes?
Do you really have everything in place for us?
We do. The ball is, as they say, in your court.
Hartman and Elgin exit.
Mr. Gold, would you be up for a little late night policy writing?
Really?
Spitzer starts to walk toward the exit.
Come on. If we hurry, we can get it done in time for a committee vote tomorrow.
They exit. Blackout. Act 2, Scene 8. Lights come up on Spiegel's dining room table. Spiegel is sitting down alone, drinking a cocktail. He is talking directly to the audience.
And that, believe it or not, is really how it all happened, give or take a lie or two. That young naval doctor really did come to the bar that night in his uniform, found Ronald Gold, and gave that emotional admission, which really did happen in front of Dr. Spitzer. Gold and Spitzer were so inspired, they went back to the hotel and worked all through the night on an amendment to the DSM. The next morning, the nomenclature committee voted on it, and a few hours later, the reference committee passed it on to the president for a vote of the entire APA. Through a mail-in vote later that year, the APA decided to stop treating homosexuality as a disease. From that moment on, it was our official position that the only reason a homosexual should seek therapy was if they were bothered by their homosexuality. Now, this wasn't without controversy. In total, 5,854 psychiatrists voted in favor, while 3,810 voted against. Sacaritas and Bieber were outraged, but with no one left in leadership who was sympathetic to them, they went rogue. They would continue their work trying to cure homosexuality and would eventually suffer the derision of their colleagues, particularly Dr. Spitzer. In fact, the feud between he and Dr. Bieber would last nearly 20 years until Irving's death in 1991. When Irving died, the New York Times ran an article that was critical of his work trying to cure gay people, and in a twisted piece of irony, the paper mistakenly ran a picture of Robert Spitzer. Oh, and Dr. Socarides really does have a gay son. In fact, his son served in the Clinton administration and is now a telecom executive. He's gay and happy, though his relationship with his father was always strained. As for Dr. Fryer, he eventually wound up on the faculty at Temple University. There, he provided counseling for patients who were dying from AIDS. He would even see them privately in his home so as not to compromise their identities. While he would go on to have an illustrious career after his speech, he'd be forever remembered as Dr. Anonymous. Ronald Gold and Barbara Giddings would continue their advocacy work until their passings. Mr. Gold would remain very distrusting of the field of psychiatry, which would, late in life, lead him to some regrettable conclusions about the profession's view of gender dysphoria. Oh, and you should know, we really didn't have any clue what was happening with each other. Larry, Fred, and I knew nothing about the gay PA or what Barbara and John were planning. Likewise, they had no idea of the things Larry was putting into place so skillfully. But even though none of us had any idea what the others were up to, this whole adventure never would have worked unless each of those disparate efforts had all magically come together in Hawaii. First at a convention hall and later at the bar. And now you know how it really happened. As for me, following Fred's term as president of the APA, I assumed the presidency. My wife would pass on shortly after from an illness, and I never married again. There would be a series of other Bobbies after that. When I was ready for them to know, my children and grandchildren would learn all about them.
John, we're ready.
Ah, that's David. I better get going. He doesn't like to be kept waiting. Kids are so impatient these days. Well, I mean, he is 25. Aloha.
Blackout. The end.